Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Tuesday, August 4th, and we have a lot to talk about because so much has happened over the past 24 hours, and not just in regards to earnings. We had Palantir Earnings. We'll talk about that. We had Grab Earnings. They absolutely crushed it. We'll talk about that. We had a bunch of earnings this morning in the pre-market. But you had a lot of different macro updates come out over the past, honestly, 12 hours that are really bullish for the semiconductor names and then really bullish for the overall market. If we take a look at oil right here, we are going down. We are going down, 3% down right here on oil. And part of the reason we are down is because Bessent just said a deal with Iran can be announced as soon as tomorrow. Now, maybe we get the deal, maybe we don't. But the point is, the macro backdrop over the past couple of days has been exceptional. S&P 500 is hitting all-time highs right now in the pre-market, and that is why the companies that are executing and reporting really good numbers in this macro, they're getting rewarded for it. And honestly, a lot of the companies that reported in a crappy macro last week, like a Google, are getting back a lot of what they lost because, quite frankly, you know, the markets are pricing in how effective the AI ROI is. And as a result of that, whether you're a Palantir, you're a Google, you're an Amazon that's showing those results, you are getting the benefit of that. S&P 500 right there up 0.35% as that is green. SoFi, there you go, back above 18. That is green. Nabesis, that's up 2%. Tesla's up 0.5%. Micron's up 5%. SpaceX, which has earnings today along with AMD. I'll be live for both of those earnings. Those are going to be really big ones. AMD is back above $500. That's up 4%. The optics names are going crazy, and we will talk about why. AAOI up 17%, AEHR up 6%. It was up 14% yesterday. Lumentum was up 9% yesterday, up 12% today. Part of the reason for this is because the Trump administration is planning on banning all Chinese semiconductor equipment. There's some nuance to that. It's not literally every piece of equipment that comes from China for semiconductors, but in particular, optics and lasers are benefiting from this because that just means that the domestic manufacturers are going to have an increased bid, which means that whole idea of like Chinese memory flooding the American markets, it seems like based on the headlines that came out today, that's not happening. The US is not going to allow CXMT to procure memory for companies in the United States. And as a result of that, you're seeing a lot of the semis get some momentum right there. The hyperscalers are giving some of it back. Meta down about 2%, Amazon down 2.3%, Google down about 1.3%. They all had massive days yesterday. The hyperscalers added $1 trillion of market cap in totality yesterday. So like, yeah, you had a lot of momentum. Obviously, they're going to give a little bit of that back, but overall, relatively green momentum across the entire board. Rocket Lab up another 4%, DRAM up 4%, Microsoft again down 2% after the hyperscalers had a really good day yesterday. And I think the macro backdrop is starting to look very productive for many of these assets. And then we have Palantir, which is up 15%. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with Palantir, then we'll get into Grab, then we'll get into all the different headlines that we got going on. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Good morning. AMD, that's a big one after the bell. I'll be live with Jose and Neil and I think Tanner for those earnings. SpaceX, that'll also be a big one. So it's going to be a long day. We got a ton of earnings after the bell. We have Zeta after the bell. So a bunch of different software stuff. In the pre-market, we've already had Spotify, McDonald's, Pfizer, Caterpillar, Merck, Cypher, Hut 8 Mining. So we'll talk about that. You also have a bunch of bullish headlines for the neoclouds. I mean, CoreWeave was up 20% yesterday. And based on some of the headlines I'm seeing right now in the pre-market, I mean, the neoclouds look like they're in a pretty decent spot, even after the rally from last week, because CoreWeave is still down almost 40% from the highs. So I think if the market wants to start betting on some of the names that have been taken down aggressively, by the way, it also helps when Citadel comes out and coincidentally puts out a report yesterday that says, well, we think the bull market's intact. Look at the oil prices, look at the earnings. You know, it's not like a week ago they completely destroyed the market to get some assets on the cheap. But now that they got those assets on the cheap, unfortunately, because someone got liquidated, you know, now they're ready for things to go back up. And I think that could benefit all of us that have been buying dip on these assets. All right, let's get into it. Palantir, let's get started. This is the company that effectively built my career. I kind of risked my entire reputation on this one name, which is why the YouTube channel for the first 3 years of its existence were dedicated to Palantir, 3,000 videos literally about this company. And sometimes quality matters more over quantity. And sometimes, you know, you pick the right one and you have a big community that forms over many years. And it really takes you on the journey of a lifetime. And my goodness, this journey is only getting sweeter and sweeter. Revenue of 93% year over year. Unfreaking believable. 1.94 billion. Expectations were 1.8 billion. Rule of 40 at 155%. The only companies that have a better rule of 40 than Palantir are Samsung, SK Hynix, Micron, and CXMT, which means only the memory companies benefiting from the greatest supply-demand imbalance we've ever seen for memory have a better rule of 40 than Palantir. Palantir has a better rule of 40 than NVIDIA. I mean, like it's getting kind of crazy how efficient this company is becoming, which is why they're up 15% right here in the pre-market. I know the stock is still down 15% year to date. I know the stock has been a tough hold over the past year, but at some point the numbers become unbelievable and undeniable. And I think that's what's happening right now. They put up GAAP net income about 1.1 billion. They only did 1.9 billion of revenue. That means 1.1 out of the 1.9 billion of that revenue came down to the bottom line. I mean, again, it's just absolutely incredible with the numbers that they are putting out. That was at a 55% margin. They have 9.2 billion in cash. They raised their fiscal year guide from 70% year over year to 82% year over year. They were going to do 7.6 billion. They're now doing 8.15 billion, which means it is very obvious to me that Palantir is going to try to end the year closing in on that 90 to 100% year over year growth rate. Maybe it doesn't get exactly there, but the fact that they just did 93 in Q2 means they likely will continue to accelerate. What did Karp say? Well, he continued to make the argument that the numbers were bombastic and that the numbers are quite frankly unbelievable. His exact quote: demand for AI sovereignty has now been unleashed, and Palantir is the only company that has demonstrated it can transform tokens into actual economic value. We'll talk more about that. Our customers trust us to provide them with maximal control over their operations, data, and decisions. Their competitive advantage should never become the training data for future models. This quarter was otherworldly. The sovereign AI revolution makes us optimistic about the future. There are many times where companies take a stance on something and the media paints them in a really negative way. And trust me, if you've been part of the Palantir story, you have dealt with all of the different negative media interpretations of Palantir due to their work with ICE, due to how they believe in Western values. I mean, there's always been a negative onslaught of news associated with Palantir. And as a Palantir investor, you've had to literally deal with it. I mean, in the UK right now, there's a lot of negative PR with that NHS contract for reasons that quite frankly aren't even logical, because Palantir is actually, saving lives there. But the point is, there's always been negative PR with Palantir. This was the one quarter for the first time in a few years where that PR has now flipped so positively, because Palantir is on the side of the American worker. Palantir is on the side of the small business. Palantir is on the side of American enterprise. They're not on the side of token maxing Silicon Valley elites that are just producing models for the hell of producing models and don't actually care about transforming the enterprises they work with. And that's the exciting part about this quarter. I think the entire street is starting to recognize, where does the value from AI come from? Obviously, it's an AI infrastructure. That's why Karp has said years ago, it's about chips and ontology. Chips, you need to compute. But it's then in the application layer. It's not in the model layer. And that's not to say the models aren't going to be productive or valuable, or they're not important technology, but they are not changing a hospital. They're not changing the front lines of a worker in an automotive factory. Like, you actually need an ontology. You actually need forward deployed engineers. You actually need the infrastructure to make AI meaningful. And I think that's what the street is recognizing. Bank of America, 255. Citigroup, upgrade to 245. Mizuho, upgrade to 215. Goldman Sachs, upgrade to 204. D.A. Davidson, upgrade to 200 from 175. Cantor Fitzgerald, 156. Jefferies, still at 80 for some reason, but at least they're up from 70. I mean, you got the entire street just recognizing, okay, this is getting kind of ridiculous. They increased the guide, they increased the revenue, they're beating on EPS estimates, they have 55% adjusted operating margins. Like, this is just not slowing down. And Palantir seems like a company that the analysts are saying they're only going to grow 40, 50, 60% over the next couple of years. Based on the trajectory of growth and based on what Karp said yesterday, it seems like this is a company that's going to grow minimum of 70% over the next few years. It looks like they're going to accelerate to 100% next year, which would put them at around $15 billion in revenue. They do another, 70, 80% after that. This is a company that can get to that 18 billion of free cash flow that Karp was talking about. And if they get there, the stock is cheap. If they get there, the stock is cheap, especially compared to the software multiples that exist in the space. I thought this was one of the best moments of earnings when Karp was asked on CNBC about the valuations of Anthropic and OpenAI. And here's what he had to say. Once again, I think the street is starting to really recognize where the value lies in the age of AI, and they are rewarding Palantir because of that.
And if we see the industry move towards open weight models, Frontier Labs, sovereign. If the Frontier Labs then get commoditized, what happens to their valuation? Do they get cut in? What do you think that is a necessary valuation for Anthropic, OpenAI?
I'm totally, that is irrelevant to me.
What happens to the Frontier Labs?
Sorry. I talked to Sorkin about this, and I'm just going to say the same thing. You guys are very worried about what happens to their valuation. I'm worried about what happens to American enterprises that power most of the economy, most of the jobs, what happens to the Department of War and the safety and veracity of our physical and economic life. every company in the world every company in America should be downstream of that. I have no professional or interest in discussing what, like, by the way, and that also, I would say in a slightly more acerbic way, why are we so focused on how well a small group of people do in America? Why don't we focus on how Americans are doing? And I'll tell you what's good for Americans. They get to control the value of the enterprise. By the way, it's also very good for Palantir. Witness 90%, 93% growth, 115% growth in America, rule of 40 at 155, and an ascendancy that looks like this is going to go on for at least another 18 months.
So you've got Karp getting a really good moment right there, making people ask themselves, why do we care so much about Anthropic and OpenAI? There's a ton of other models that are doing it for cheaper, that are forcing Anthropic and OpenAI to lower their prices. Like, those models are models at the end of the day that are trying to figure out how to make AI valuable. They developed some important technology, but that technology is just not that special when you look at all the other models that are out there. And so when you think about the demand for semis, it should increase if you implement sovereign infrastructure, because more people will be hosting their data locally, training their own models, and actually getting value without having to essentially give away all the IP of their enterprise. And that's what Sham talked about as well with Nemotron, making the argument that fine-tuning a model for an organization is significantly better on the benchmarks versus trusting a frontier lab.
I literally almost felt gaslit when within 24 hours of getting Nemotron up with no post-training, this is vanilla Nemotron Ultra, it did better than Frontier. You know, if you just looked at the numbers, you would say, well, it's nowhere near the Frontier. That shouldn't even be possible. But of course, the benchmarks are wrong. I mean, the benchmarks are right for what the benchmark's measuring, but that's not my business. Those are not the tasks my customers had that they were trying to solve. I literally...
Again, they're just on the right side of this issue. Like, when you look at the benchmarks of Grok and GPT and Claude, it's like, okay, cool, whatever. But the benchmarks of a hospital that needs to make sure that their nurses are being more efficient, or that they're able to get patients in and out of the beds quicker, that the staffing is more productive. Those benchmarks are about having an ontology that understands the nature of your organization connected to the models that actually leads to business outcome. And that is why Anthropic and OpenAI are going after forward deployed engineers and building all these platforms. I mean, OpenAI literally acquired a forward deployed engineered consulting firm called North Slope 3 weeks ago. Why? Because they need to figure out how to implement the stuff in their models, which is so special, into an enterprise. Consumers don't have the money. They're not going to make hundreds of billions of dollars off people paying $20 a month. Like, that's, the advertising business is going to be okay, but it's not going to be monumental. It's enterprises that are willing to pay for this stuff. And I think that's why Palantir is getting the 15% bump right here, because the market's recognizing that if those enterprises actually have the money and Palantir is actually unlocking the value, and the growth is now matching the actual narrative that has been said around enterprise AI adoption over the past couple of years, that's why the stock should deserve a premium, and obviously should be valued in a more appropriate way versus the other SaaS companies that have been deemed as companies that could die due to AI. I mean, Palantir is doing the exact opposite, and they're proving it every single quarter. So it was incredible earnings, incredible quarter. I think the PR around what Palantir is saying, the mission that they're going around, actually makes sense. The market is recognizing that. And look, does the stock stay up 16% when we open? I kind of think so. I think this was one of those quarters where it's like, you really can't deny it. If it falls, and it is what it is. I think at this point, it's kind of like Amazon. If Amazon were to go back to 230, I think people would buy the dip, given now what we know what they're doing with CapEx, AWS growth at 37%. If Palantir were to actually go back to the 120s, I think the market would be more excited to buy the dip if it wasn't a massive macro drawdown. Because now you've just got earnings and guidance that is reflecting something significantly better for this year and for next year, and more likely for the years to come. So congrats everybody in Palantir. Great earnings, awesome stuff. And hopefully this momentum can continue. But if it's about AI adoption for the enterprise, it looks like Palantir is actually showing that story, and the numbers are there to now prove that story in a much more meaningful way. Grab, let's talk about that. So Grab crushed it. I will have a full write-up today. I didn't get time yesterday because we had Palantir earnings. But look, I know the stock has not performed like CoreWeave or Nebius or Micron or all that stuff. And honestly, that's not the expectation that's put on the stock to do that, because it's not an AI company. It's not an American company. There's a different thesis that I have in terms of the long-term exposure to it. And I can't really control the price action. Obviously, if people think there's an opportunity cost, they can change the way they allocate their own capital. That is totally fine. But in terms of investing in a company and hoping that the company executes, and eventually hoping the share price reflects that execution, sometimes it takes time. Took time with Palantir, took 2.5 years, took time with Robinhood, 2.5 years, Grab. We're 1.5 years into the journey. I'm assuming over the next 2 years, it will be able to reflect more meaningfully in the stock price. But in terms of the earnings, all I could ask for is execution, and that's what we're getting. Revenue beat, EPS beat, their best EPS they've had in a quarter. They raised their guidance to $4.15 billion. They're buying back $750 million of shares now, so they're recognizing the undervaluation of the stock, and they're using their cash pile to start buying back stock. MTUs, Southeast Asia has 700 million. They're now at 54 million, almost 7% of the entire population in Southeast Asia. That's up 17% year over year. Grab Unlimited grew up 20% year over year. That's their subscription product. Loan book accelerated 200% year over year, 2.3 billion. They're going to be profitable in H2 when it comes to GrabFin, which is only $15 million away from adjusted EBITDA profitability. And then gross and net cash is about 5.4 billion, 7.4 billion gross, 5.4 billion in net cash. There's a lot to say on this that I'll talk about on my X post later today as I go deeper into it. But if you actually listen to the call and try to understand what's happening right here, every single metric that I care about and that investors should care about is growing up and to the right. And because it's growing up and to the right, once again, you've seen this many times in the stock market. If there's a fundamental thesis breaker in a stock or a fundamental narrative breaker, the stock tends to be stuck. Sometimes you don't even need those two things, and the stock can still stay stuck and they can still have massive growth. I think for Grab, at the end of the day, it's a growth stock. The thing that's been hurting them is oil prices, which obviously is not seen in the quarter, even though oil prices have been bad for them, narrative-wise. And then the robotaxi thing has been an issue. They addressed the robotaxi thing again on the call, if you listen to it, and they're just like, look, robotaxis are not coming to Southeast Asia anytime soon. If it were to come, we have investments, we have hybrid models, we have partnerships in place. If it were to work in Singapore, which is probably the only place in Southeast Asia it would meaningfully work. And so from that perspective, my entire thesis is regional consolidation of all the different services that are provided in that region are consolidating to Grab. They're not going to get 100% market share, but they're getting, closing in on almost 50%. And if they continue to accelerate the way they're doing over the next few years, even with the political backdrops that are tenuous in the region, I think they're going to win. And I obviously think that the price is undervalued given the fair value of what the company should be trading at. The buybacks also, I think, reflect that. I mean, the company has a 15 billion market cap, net enterprise value of 10 billion. They're buying back they're buying basically 7.5% of the company back, or of the enterprise value back. And I think that will be reflected over time in the share price. Every price target was increased today on Grab. Every reiteration was put out there. Evercore has an $8 price target. I think it's basically $7.50 to $8 is my fair value. So, I mean, in terms of a quarter that produced the results, raised the guidance, did what it needed to do, they're going to hit the high end of their guidance. They're likely going to raise guidance one more time in Q3. They did what I wanted them to do. Broadcom, by the way, up 3% right here, crossing 400 in the pre-market. And yeah, sometimes you can't control the stock price, but you can definitely control your allocation of capital to a company that is compounding earnings. And I think from a sustainability perspective as well, a lot of the picks and shovels plays, I don't know how sustainable they are in 5 years, even though they're obviously much better performers in the short term. But sustainability-wise, I think Grab will be around for a long time. And as a result of that, they will continue to compound earnings. So that is what we have on Palantir and Grab. We have AMD after the bell. We'll talk about that. Zeta after the bell, and then SpaceX. Let me just say real quick on SpaceX before we get into the macro. I know I've been kind of shitting on the valuation because how could you not? But the chart actually looks kind of rippy. And it's one of those things where I don't know what Elon's going to say today. This is their first earnings as a public company. I'm hoping they have something planned to really impress the market right here. I know they have a massive unlock coming up, and that unlock's probably going to get a lot of shares sold into it. But if they can just say something with the right catalyst to get this stock to move, I don't think a run to the 125, 130 range is that crazy, especially if you just have really good catalysts. And also, it's taken a pretty big beating. Having said that, I would not start a position here because at the end of the day, I'm just really scared that the share unlock could lead to a massive liquidity event. So time will tell, but overall, that's what we have on Mr. SpaceX. All right, macro. So Bessent said some good stuff. Market liked it. Effectively, Trump also said some good stuff, and the market liked it. So what happened yesterday, or what happened Sunday night? Trump said he's not going to attack Iran. The market really liked it. Futures pumped like crazy. And, that's kind of what you needed for oil prices to go down in a meaningful way. Then yesterday, he was once again asked about Iran, and this is a different Trump than what we've had over the past week. It's a Trump that's essentially acknowledging he wants to make a deal.
So where are the Iran talks, and what are your requirements
Well, you'll find
right
out
now?
today or tomorrow. I mean, they're going to go quickly, one way or the other. It's not very complex. We're talking about the strait, the opening of the strait, having it open literally by tomorrow, completely open. And that's phase one. And phase two is we then will talk about the nuclear capacity, the nuclear, as we've been mentioned. Basically, it's, I think, the denuclearization of Iran has to happen. And that'll be the second phase. But the first phase is the opening of the straits. The second phase will be the denuclearization, and that'll take a little while. But we're very strong on it. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and I have never changed in that. Yeah, please.
So where are the Iran talks?
Once again, that does not sound like Trump of last week saying he's ready to bomb the crap out of Iran. And so you just got a full 180 on how he's talking. I hope it doesn't go back to the more violent rhetoric. But I mean, I think that's why stocks are up, bond yields are down, and oil is down. You're getting a Trump that is a lot more prone to try to get a deal done.
Are the talks with Iran now off and are airstrikes
No,
back
they're
on?
on. They're going on right now. It's an amazing thing. We have a little problem with Iran because we have many talks and we'll say we have or we don't have. You know, we're straight about it. But they deny, but they're not denying it now. They just put out a statement not denying it. But for some reason, they, when they're talking, they don't like saying that they're talking. So I say, wait, we're in talks. Big deal. We're in talks. And they'll sometimes deny it, even though they spend hours and hours together talking. No, the talks are going along. We're going to hit them very hard yesterday, very, very hard, harder than any attack. I think I can say, General, from a point of knowledge, any attack since World War II, that's pretty big. And we were set to go, and they called. And in addition, Saudi Arabia called, and UAE called, Qatar called. I called from numerous people. Not, I don't want to use the word begging, but some were, in particular, Iran did not want to be hit. And they said, we want to talk. We want to talk about the strait, but more importantly, from my standpoint, we want to talk about the denuclearization of Iran, because it's what it's all about. This is why I'm doing this.
So look, those two sound bites are very different from what we got last week. Again, Trump tweeted about Iran yesterday as well, and his entire tweet was like, hey, Iran keeps saying they're not talking to us, but they are talking to us, which wasn't a bearish tweet, in my opinion. It was more so Trump trying to get the media to realize, look, no, we're actually talking. And I think he's trying to get people to report that they're talking more aggressively because he wants bond yields to come down and oil prices to come down, because at this point, it's getting unsustainable. Now, having said that, yesterday night, there was a report of a one-way drone strike in Kuwait on a U.S. base from the Iranians. So you've got a potential new U.S. base attack, just like they did on the U.S. base in Jordan on Friday. And now you have Kuwait. So it's one of those things where it's like, it kind of feels like the Iranians don't want to talk, even if they are talking, or there's different factions of the Iranians that are talking, but also causing chaos at the same time to get maximum amounts of leverage. You know, there's two options for Trump. Either he straight up says, all right, we are putting boots on the ground and we are officially like legit going to war, or we're going to have to give up some stuff because we don't really have a lot of bargaining room here, and we can't have oil prices go to the moon, bond yields go to the moon, and then the stock market completely collapsing just because of the Strait of Hormuz. So it feels like Trump has shifted to the side of like, let's just get it over with. Let's get a deal done again. Who knows? Because every time we say this every week, the next week there's an attack and there's some type of fight. But even Bessent came on CNBC this morning and said, yeah, you get a deal announced as soon as tomorrow. And I don't know what a deal means. I imagine it wouldn't be an actual deal. It would probably be like a framework for a deal or an MOU or something like that. But as long as they give us something, AMD right here up 4% of the pre-market, then, you know, maybe the markets can come down. Having said that, you're just seeing a lot of momentum in stocks. The Q's back above 700, not too bad. S&P 500 has officially hit all-time highs right here, 760. I mean, we are at all-time highs after the worst month in the stock market, at least for July, for high beta momentum stocks in the past 20 years. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It really, really is kind of crazy in terms of how quick the sentiment has changed. And obviously that sentiment has changed partly because of the liquidation event, which has allowed more and more excitement to come back into the market, potentially more and more leverage. And that's why you're seeing EPS growth continue to be rewarded. And this is what Barclays said this morning. They said S&P 500 earnings are crushing expectations. 85% of the S&P 500 companies have beaten Q2 earnings, well above the long-term average of 76%. Revenues up 11% year over year for the average S&P 500 company, while EPS is up 25%. The average earnings growth for the S&P 500 is around 7 to 8%. Which is why, you know, the market on average grows around 8 to 10%. Like it's not really substantial over the past 100 years. The last 5-year stretch, and particularly the last 3-year stretch that we have had, is unprecedented in the type of earnings that we've seen. And obviously the sustainability of those earnings are definitely in question, but if you believe in the potential of AI and the potential to increase GDP and growth and productivity, that is the story for why the markets have continued to do as well. I mean, take a look at the Mag 7. This is a little bit off because this was yesterday's close, but these names were all red year to date. Now Tesla's the only one that's down aggressively, down 30. Meta's down 11. Microsoft's basically break even. Microsoft was in a bear market, down about 25%. And now you've got Google up 17, Apple up 12, even after the 10% drawdown that it took the other day on earnings. And then Amazon up about 20%. So you are seeing the hyperscale. I mean, yesterday was the first day, by the way, we talked about this a lot on the show. Yesterday was the first day that the hyperscalers, the semiconductors, and the software names actually all went up together. And part of the reason for that is this chart right here. The S&P 500 net profit margin is now 16.7%. In December of 2020, it was 10.9%. So a full 600 basis points increase in the past 6 years. And you actually had the three sectors that have been against each other this entire year, semis, software, hyperscalers, one goes up, the other goes down, participate together. All of us were able to be friends. And part of the reason I think all of us were able to be friends is because Citadel finally is allowing us to be friends. Citadel, yesterday, July reset the bull market, not ended it. Retail investors turned into net sellers. AI and semiconductor stocks were heavily sold, and leveraged ETF assets fell by more than $60 billion from their peak. July did not change the structural bull market. It reset it, adding that investors can now focus on more company fundamentals than positioning. So it's nice that Citadel scared everybody right before the potential rate hike, liquidated a 24-year-old and basically took $16 billion of his assets, and now is up almost 30% on average from that day that they got those assets on 40, 50 cents on the dollar. But it seems like they're going to let the bull market continue to go on and not spread that much FUD, which is nice for the rest of us that are buying the dip. So Wall Street's a ruthless game. It's a ruthless game. I mean, Ken Griffin basically saw the opportunity to scare the entire market, make sure that someone who was on the edge of getting liquidated definitely got liquidated, takes his shares cheap, and then comes out and says, yeah, the AI bull market is intact. We got rid of all the leverage. We're good to go. And as a result of that, you are seeing all-time highs on the S&P, and the broader market is now benefiting from that. Now, someone else who's benefiting from that as well is a guy named Jeff Bezos. I don't know if anyone saw the news right here, but is it a bull trap? That's something we'll talk about today. I think we need a couple more days of data to see if it's actually a bull trap, at least honestly a couple more weeks. But given the market momentum, not just because of price action, but because of the fundamental reason why the price action is happening, it feels more like the leverage of the system, which is a good thing. Bezos sold $4 billion of stocks yesterday. So, and this was, the fact that Amazon had the day that it had yesterday, I think Amazon started selling off around 287. It came down to like 284. Now it's 270 in the pre-market. But Mr. Bezos, for the first time in a year, has sold some stock. Now, if you guys have been following Amazon for the past couple of years, the reason this thing was really not able to move back in 2023 is because Bezos almost every other month was selling like $2 billion worth of shares. This is when the stock was effectively like 170 to 200. Every time it got to 200, there was a Bezos sell order that came in. So, yeah, it's one of those things where obviously he's taking advantage of the fact that the stock price has gone up so much. But it is also one of those things that's concerning a little bit because it kept the stock. It wasn't the only thing, but it probably was one of the things that kept the stock kind of flat for a while. Maybe Amazon's not the best buy at the moment if Bezos is going to have another couple billion that he gets ready to sell. Obviously, it's already had a massive run. It's had one of its best runs it's had in the past couple of years. So 276 right here in Amazon. I think if it can at least hold the 270s, that would be bullish. But that stock down about 2.5% in the pre-market. So, hyperscalers, semis, software names together. I mean, even Snapchat went up yesterday. The earnings were okay. They weren't amazing, but Snapchat's up 7%. Like everything is starting to get some love just based on how badly everything got hit. The lasers and optics plays, why are those up? Actually really interesting. And I wonder how far the administration is going to go with this. But the administration, this was reported by Reuters this morning, may ban the use of optical transceivers that are manufactured in China. Now, AAOI in particular does manufacturing in China, but they also have a hub in Taiwan. They've been expanding their manufacturing footprint to Texas. Same thing with Lumentum and Coherent. I think Coherent, it was in Texas, just opened up a new factory with NVIDIA, and they invested a couple billion in it. So you're starting to see the photonics names rise as much as they are right now in the pre-market and some of the memory names because the domestic focus on manufacturing is very important. And if the administration is legit going to ban transceivers that are made in China, which I don't think is the craziest thing in the world. I mean, China bans a lot of our stuff. So from a hardware perspective, especially if the administration is so focused on manufacturing, if you can do that internally in the United States, TSM right there up 3%, Intel up 5% as well, Intel almost back to 100, then that would be something that could definitely benefit the American companies that are here. Bloom's up 4%, Amcor is up 6%. This thing was down almost 35% last week. Ondas up another 2%, Broadcom up 3%, Oracle's down 2%, but it was up 9 yesterday. Oracle went from 114 to 140. Like, you just had a ton of leverage get wiped out last week, and a lot of that money is coming back, maybe in the form of leverage, but also maybe in the form of institutional buying that is a lot more excited to take a chance on these names. Yeah, GLW, Corning, went all the way down to the 120s. It's back at 160. I mean, some of these names have just recovered phenomenally, and if they can at least hold these levels, I think you can argue that it's not a dead cat bounce. You can argue that there's a lot of strength here, and that, quite frankly, if retail has been the net seller, which every data point I looked at, we looked at a couple data points last week, was that retail was the net seller. $623 million was sold from Monday to Wednesday last week of semiconductor names and memory stocks and overall tech stocks from retail. Then I would imagine institutional investors are the buyers. And if that's the case, you've got a lot of strong money going into the system. Ricardo, thank you for the gift of 10 memberships. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the memberships. 10 people just got a gift of membership because of you. Going Dutch Films, thank you for the super chat as well. Enjoying some Saratoga as we speak. You know, I really have not had Saratoga water ever since that infamous day where I drank it and the market tanked. And you guys were like, you can't be drinking fancy water. I've kept it up by drinking regular water here. K3, thank you for the super chat. AMD tonight. I'm excited for AMD as well, quite frankly, because although I think the multiple on AMD is relatively aggressive compared to NVIDIA, I think the macro backdrop has changed over the past 72 hours. And now you've got a backdrop. And the same thing for Palantir. I mean, if Palantir reported last week, I don't know if those results would have been rewarded because, like, it was just such a bad week to report. Even SoFi was down like 15% on their earnings, and now that's started to come back. I mean, I think they've gained back everything they lost and more because, like, you just needed to have a better macro for the market to digest those results. And the fact that Palantir reported yesterday, and we had the best day on the S&P basically in 2026, it was a great backdrop for them to do well. And that's why it's getting some of that momentum. Did you talk about Grab? Yes, earlier in the show, rewind about 20 minutes, we talked about Grab. I'll have a long post on X today to talk about it. TLDR, they crushed every metric that I care about. I think the stock is deeply undervalued. I think the market will eventually reflect that. But in terms of what they needed to do, raising guidance, crushing the earnings, get their financial services in place to be profitable, which is, I think, going to be the largest operating leverage driver of the business. It was incredible earnings for them, and I think they are on the right trajectory. Corey right there, that's up 1%. That was up 20% yesterday. Zeta, that's up 4%. And remember, like, a lot of these names that were up yesterday on the, as they rebounded, that 20% volatility feels amazing on CoreWeave up, but it also had 50% volatility on the way down. So it's one of those things where I feel like the past couple of days have been a reminder of how amazing that volatility can be on the way up, especially if you have a heavy size position and if you've been buying the dip. But it's also the price you have to pay on the way down, right? Like, you have to deal with Nebius going from 300 to 160 or 147 at one point if you want to go from 147 to 220 in a matter of a couple of days. The indices aren't going to do that. Bonds aren't going to do that. And so you kind of need to be able to have the stomach to be in a stock for a long time or to be in the volatile nature of the stock, which is why not being on leverage and margin is so important, because you just need to be able to survive. And as long as you've been able to survive in these names, they're still not back at their all-time highs. I mean, a lot of them are still down a lot from their all-time highs. So there's technically, I think it's bullish because there's a lot of room to run. Like Robinhood. Robinhood should not be below $100 after those earnings. It just shouldn't. I mean, especially as Q3 is very similar to Q2 based on the trading volumes. Like, Robinhood is going to crush Q3, and they're probably going to grow closer to 35%. So, but nonetheless, last week was tough, took a bad hit. And many of these names, especially in the semiconductor space, I think are starting to get some of their momentum back. ASTS, so there was a report this morning that's up 7%. I know my ASTS folks have been going through it right here with the $1 billion dilution that was announced a couple weeks ago. Meta hosted the ASTS Space Mobile team at its Menlo Park office last week for an intensive technical and product workshop on bringing WhatsApp over AST Space Mobile satellite network worldwide. And that is the reason I believe the stock was up 7% yesterday and up another 7% today. Discussions covered user experience, network architecture, technical integration, and go-to-market strategy. The goal includes direct-to-device voice, video messaging, and Meta AI experiences Part of the reason Rocket Lab bought Iridium, part of the reason why SpaceX has such a big TAM when it comes to connectivity is that the entire world needs to come online, and there is only about 4 billion people, 3.8 to 4 billion people on the planet that actually have access to the internet. We have 8 billion people on planet Earth. So, there's just a massive, massive opportunity. And of those 3.8 billion people, there's a good 30 to 40% that don't even have access to high-speed broadband connections. So there's just a lot of opportunity for the connectivity players, whether it's SpaceX, ASTS, and now Rocket Lab to an extent, to be able to get that connectivity to the most amount of people possible. And so the TAM is obviously very large. The execution is really important. Dilution is kind of a technical stock market thing that happens, which is why stocks go down. But seems like that is starting to come back a little bit right here. Software is down a bit in the pre-market with the hyperscalers. You got Reddit, Shopify, Meta, ServiceNow down. One of the only software names that's actually up in the pre-market is Palantir because of those results. So, once again, do we have a massive green day? And the software names in particular are the ones that get hit. I don't think the whole algo of short software, long semis, short software is out yet, especially looking at some of this pre-market action. But I think it's starting to fade. I think the more and more these companies produce amazing results, especially if they're companies that, are producing the results that are needed for the market to be excited about their earnings, it's not going to be as algorithmic as it is towards the end of the year. I think it's going to be much more rooted in, is your company beating expectations? And if it is, then, your stock gets love regardless of what sector it's in. By the way, this is what the AWS CEO said yesterday around CapEx and demand. Stuff is just not slowing down, and this is ultra, ultra bullish for the neoclouds.
What's the trajectory for next year? You expect that CapEx will be bigger still? Because I think one of the things that Amazon was quite clear about is that even at $220 billion, it might not be enough to meet current demand.
Yeah. One of the things that we're quite excited about is just the potential business for us is just massive. And we see this as a huge opportunity for us to really invest and help customers take advantage of the AI opportunity. And so we will keep investing. We think that there's a big opportunity for us and for customers. And as Andy kind of called out last week, we have really great insight into what that demand is going to be from customers. And so when we invest, and we will keep investing in CapEx next year as well, we have great insight into when that revenue is going to land. And so it's pretty well known for us. And as Andy mentioned, much of our capacity is already spoken through the end of 27 and even through much of 28. And so as we're investing, we're getting 5-year commitments from customers. We're getting these long-term commitments. And so we're out there making investments to keep being able to grow the business and try to meet customer demand. But as you say, today demand still significantly outstrips supply, and we're trying to build and invest to keep up with what customers are asking for.
And what's exciting about that is, again, on the call, they said, if we think demand is slowing down, we're going to cut CapEx. But there's no need for us to cut CapEx because we have more demand than we know what to do with, especially going into 2028. And quite frankly, if the ambitions from Jassy are to make AWS a $1 trillion company, $1 trillion business in recurring revenue per year, and if it gets to $1 trillion, it's going to get to more than $1 trillion, right? Like this is the ecom business is going to do $1 trillion in revenue. You're going to have a company doing $2 trillion in revenue. I mean, trading at 4 or 5 times sales gets you $8 trillion market cap. Like they're going to have to spend a lot on compute to make that happen. And so if they're going to be doing it, Microsoft's going to be doing it, Google's going to be doing it. Again, there's nuances to the picks and shovels semiconductor trade, but the overall macro theme is that the CapEx is being spent. And now the allocation of that CapEx ultimately will be determined. And the equities that benefit the most from those earnings and can show that, they have business models that can sustain through the CapEx cycle, I think are going to be the major winners. And I think the neoclouds are likely to be one of the broader winners in that space over the long term. Hedge funds, they're not doing that great year to date. July took out a lot of them in a pretty bad way. The best hedge fund is a company called Quant Edge, which quite frankly does mainly quantitative strategies. You know what I've noticed about a lot of these hedge funds as I've been doing more research on them? The ones that are quantitatively focused, AKA they don't care about the stock that they're trading. They don't care about the thesis or the sell side price target. All they care about is like, is it going down or up? And can we make money on both sides? They're the ones that tend to really outperform. I mean, Jim Simons, Renaissance Technology, right? They did not give a shit about what stock they were trading, what commodity, what currency, what bond. They just wanted to trade in the right direction. The hedge funds that actually take directional positions, like a Leopold, which are very rare to find a Leopold type of guy who finds every stock at the right moment and then unfortunately, gets liquidated with leverage, they tend to underperform the S&P because it's really hard to pick stocks. And many of these hedge funds, they're hedging. So even if they have a winner, they have a hedge on their winner because their fiduciary obligation is to hedge. So they can't be like retail that lets Rocket Lab go from 4 to 70 because they have hedges all the way up, which, degrades some of their gains. So from that perspective, the hedge funds are not massively outperforming this year. And July was a very tough month for many of them, which also means they're going to have an incentive to make August through December really good and, try to get those returns that they lost, which hopefully just leads to a lot more pressure on the long side when it comes to equities trying to get some momentum. So overall, guys, it's not too bad of a situation we got right now. Marvell, that's up 9% based on the China news of some of these transceivers being banned. You got a lot of these semiconductor names that are liking the macro backdrop, liking that oil is coming down, and also liking the news that domestic manufacturing is going to be more put into focus. Micron, I am very curious when this gets back to 1,000. I think it's kind of obvious that it will. The question is, does the market still have like this weird feeling around memory and prices being cyclical and topping and stuff like that? But 865, that's up 4%. Did get some love yesterday, then it ended up getting rejected. So we're going to see if Micron can continue to make a broader move right here. Crypto is the one thing that has not really worked, and unfortunately that's also been because the rate cut thesis hasn't played out. The Clarity Act thesis is not, becoming more relevant, at least not in August. But I think once crypto comes back, then you have an entire bull market that is participating in a much more productive way. We have a headline right here that it looks like the Strait of Hormuz announcement will be today. Senior source to Al Jazeera, an announcement is expected regarding the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Arrangements for fully reopening the Strait of Hormuz could be announced within hours or by tomorrow. Intensive communications are underway and progress has been made. If that headline is real, I think stocks are going to be a little greeny green. And as soon as that announcement actually comes out and oil hopefully gets back into the low 70s, right now it's at 77, you might get the market to be a lot more excited. We might get the market to be a lot more excited. By the way, speaking of being excited around where the market's going, this is what Bessent had to say this morning around inflation and what's going on with the Fed.
Well, again, I don't think that Chair Warsh or indeed the overall FOMC, you got to remember, Joe, when they raise rates here, if they raise rates, they're looking at long and variable lead time. So they've got to be thinking what's going on 9, 12, 18 months out. And I do think that there are a lot of things going on there. We're seeing shelter owners equivalent rents come down. And that's where core inflation is. And the media doesn't want to report it, but President Trump has done it again, same as he did in his first term. In the president's first term, hourly workers did better than supervisory workers. And now what we're seeing now is the bottom quartile of wage earners have had year over year 5.5% wage gains. And that's 3 times more than the top quartile.
Which is obviously very good for the economy, very good for the labor market. The labor market has been really good. The only thing that's really been messing with the Fed, it's not the labor market. It's not even, quite frankly, bond yields or it's just oil. It's energy. If we get inflation to come down and we have a good labor market, we're in a really good sweet spot. And unfortunately, 25% of the Fed voted for a rate hike because oil is not coming down, which means inflation is not coming down. So if we could just get the war to end, keep the labor market strong, keep GDP growth strong, keep earnings strong, which earnings have been strong for the past year now, and have inflation come down, we're in a much better scenario. Caterpillar, they crushed earnings today, beat by 32%, 817 versus 620 on revenue, 7%. Shout out to Dougie. He was talking about Caterpillar last year a lot. This has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the AI CapEx build out. And as a result, those companies that need to produce the numbers are producing the numbers, even with the drawdown that I experienced last week. The market is getting back to rewarding them. And you're seeing that momentum reflected across the entire equity landscape. All right, folks, here we go. It is Tuesday, August 4th. Thank you all for being here. 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, let's get into it. 761 on the S&P. That is an all-time high. Palantir Can we go for 150? It is $3 away, $4 away. Can we go for it? 17% open on Mr. Palantir, 146.79 right there. Grab up 7.2%, trying to go for $4 on their earnings. Lumentum, that's up 7%. Airtest Systems, that's up 4%. AAOI, that's up 15%. Robinhood, getting some love from those earnings last week. 94, there you go, up 4.4%. It was 90 in the pre-market. Street's starting to give it a little bit more love given the results they had. Wow, Palantir, we are very close, folks, for that 150. We are very close. 148.53. Looks like she wants to get there. 149, 30 cents away. It's been about a few months since we've seen 150. Let's see if we can get there. Coinbase, that's up 1%. Roblox up 0.5%. Astera Labs, that is up 8%. ASTS, 7.6%. That is green. Amazon, actually with a green candle, even though it was down in the pre-market, still red. But you got a green candle up from the lows of the pre-market, 275 to 279. You got SpaceX, that's up 3%. S&P 500, 761. That is a new all-time high. Nvidia, thank you for participating in this bull market. 211. We broke 200 yesterday. Seemed kind of obvious with the hyperscalers doing what they're doing. I think if we can at least hold the 210s to 220s range at this point, and that could become the new 190 to 200, I'd be happy with that. Nvidia, 211. That's up 2.3 as she's trying to continue making a move. Got a little bit of a red candle right there, but still holding on. Meta's down 2%. Meta was almost 600 yesterday. Google's down 1%. Again, they had big days yesterday, so it makes sense that they're taking a little bit of a breather. Nvidia up 2%. Palantir, it was up 19%. That was the highest open for it since April of 2025. So it's been a year since we've had this type of move. ARM, that's up 8%. That was down 10% yesterday. SoFi should be well above 18. SoFi, there you go, 18.30. Getting back everything and more that it lost on earnings. I mean, those earnings were pretty damn good last week. And quite frankly, I think a lot of SoFi investors weren't even that upset that the stock fell down. It was annoying, but it was also like, the earnings are that good and the market's eventually going to catch on. And it looks like the market is trying to catch on right here. Wix, that was up 9%. It was down 10% yesterday. Monolithic Power, that's up 4%. Microsoft, are we a little red there? We are. No, actually somewhat green. 488 on Mr. Microsoft. Hoodie looks like she's going for 95. Lemonade up 2% as well. Your photonics names are actually getting some red candles from the pre-market, but they're still up very nicely for the day. As we can see right there, AAOI up 15%, still down from 132 in the highs of the pre-market, but 127. So again, the transceivers potentially being banned from China is the news for your optics plays and why they're green. AEHR also got a third order this morning. That's why that stock is up. AMD back above 500. Nebius, the Neo Clouds, are we moving? Nebius, yep, that's up 3%. CoreWeave up 4%. Dude, CoreWeave was about to hit 90. This thing was $58 on Wednesday. I mean, just the massive change in sentiment around how the market's thinking of some of these stocks. Palantir right there, 147.73. We got to 149.70. Couldn't break 150. I'll check resistance there, but I imagine it might be a decent chunk, although if the volume is there, volume's already 16 million shares right there on Palantir. We might be able to break through. Red Cat and Ondas, you're seeing all your drone names get some love, which is very nice. They, again, also are in 50% drawdowns, both of them. Ondas right there. Wow, 7% for Mr. Ondas. Red Cat, 6%. Again, that $1.5 trillion budget that's coming out soon could also be a very, very big catalyst. Nokia, are we getting some love there? Back above $10. This one fell to almost $8 last week. Again, a lot of these names just sold off with everything else. Oscar, that's had a great year, $30. I think that fell to like 28 last week, $30. That's up 0.5%. Bloom Energy, 160 to 227 on a fantastic earnings. And pretty much every new deal they hinted at was with the hyperscaler, which shows the sustainability of their fuel cell technology with the companies that have the biggest balance sheets in the world to be able to spend on this stuff. Broadcom back above 400. This was a big dip buy for a lot of us. 385, 390. I think at one point it got to 360. This is one of the biggest large cap semiconductor names that probably deserves to go up if TSMC and NVIDIA are going up, similar growth rates. And so it's nice to see the street give that some love. Palantir, did we touch it? Did we get 150? We are very close. Very close. 5 cents. There it is. There she is. It has been so long. When's the last time we saw 150? I think it's many months ago. It was at the end of May. It was at the end of May, early June, June 1st. Yeah, that was that day that all the SaaS names rallied. I remember that day. That was the day Salesforce hit 200. Yeah, so that was like end of May, early June. So it's been about 2 months. And it seems like it's trying to get back. And now it is not stopping at 150, up 20% on the day. ASTS, is that moving higher? Wow. Broke the 70s for the space mob. If SpaceX delivers a great earnings again, I think, and SpaceX, right, they're up 6%. I think the space names are kind of trading in that same algo. So as long as SpaceX can give some decent numbers, CoreWeave breaks 90, Nebius breaks 222. Then I would imagine Rocket Lab and ASTS can get a little bit of a bid. Rocket Lab right there, are we at 73, 75. Rocket Lab's basically at the same price it was at when it got the 266 million Air Force contract, and then it fell to 58 from 75. So it's getting right back to where it was the day that deal announced. And obviously SpaceX momentum helping it as well. Wow, Palantir 151. She's not slowing down. Robin a 95. Oh man. What a difference a week makes, guys. Like, I mean, whatever sector you're in, your portfolio has to be different from last. If you're heavy in software, you're up from last week. If you're heavy in semis, you're obviously up from last week. If you're heavy in the hyperscalers, you're having a really great week. Micron right there, 870. The memory names, I know they've been crushed, but they are starting to come back pretty extensively. Again, a lot of these aren't at their all-time highs, but still, you know, if you're heavy in Google, that thing fell to 318 last week. It's now 372. That makes a massive difference. Reddit, that's up another 1.4%. I thought that was a great dip buy on Friday for people that took advantage of it. 157 fell all the way to 135. For what reason? What changed in 72 hours for Reddit to go from 135 to 157? Like, a lot of these names just got egregiously sold off. Zeta, that's up 4%. You got a big earnings. Zeta actually went up yesterday when Palantir went up, which was hilarious because if the market starts pegging Zeta to Palantir and Zeta can actually start delivering some serious growth, you know, maybe, again, this is a $5 billion company growing at 50% year over year. They have earnings today after hours. Maybe that one could get a meaningful breakout. Marvell, 330 down to 150, now at 217. I mean, just massive, massive momentum across the board. If you're heavy in crypto, you're down. Yes, that is fair. Crypto, I guess, is the one sector that is not really helping. But this is why got a lot of shit for this last year. But I've always said Robinhood's my crypto proxy because you're betting on more than just Bitcoin. And if you looked at Coinbase numbers versus Robinhood numbers on earnings, I mean, Coinbase was abysmal. And it's not even their fault. It's just like that's what people do on Coinbase. It's crypto. On Hood, you have so many other financial services, but crypto is still becoming a massive part of their business. Now, Robinhood is still not at all-time highs, but it's obviously outperformed and meaningfully diverged here from Bitcoin. SoFi, that's up 1.74%. CoreWeave in the 90s. This is really where the dip was that I think most people, the initial dip, 80 to 90. 82.17 was my dip 2 weeks ago. I think a lot of people that 90, 95 range because it was down from 140. So now getting this thing back over 100 will make a lot of people more green. Rocket Lab 75, that continues to be green. Nebius 223. Nebius, I think around that essentially low 200, 190 range was the dip buy for a lot of people. I bought Nebius at 230, bought Nebius at 178. Did not expect it to go to 147, but I mean, Citadel got to essentially buy 5% of the company at around 140, 150, and now it's up 35%. It's unbelievable the types of gains that those assets will create for Citadel, but they picked them up really freaking cheap. Salesforce, that's up 0.5%. AMD, that is up 5%. DRAM, I would look, memory is the one that actually you would think would come back the quickest, just given how cheap they are, and they haven't. So either memory is getting ready for a longer consolidation where it just kind of is choppy, or it's coiling up to rip pretty hard. And I'm not sure which one, but you would imagine it would get re-rated. Shopify back to 120 as well, as that continues to go green. So now we need to see when the US and Iran announce this deal. And when they do, I think the market will be a lot more excited. Maybe it's priced in. Maybe we're seeing it get priced in right now, and it might be a sell the news. That's very possible. But if it's not, then we should get some love. Spotify is down. It was down 7% on earnings. I don't know why. The earnings were good. I mean, I know they missed slightly on the top and the bottom line, but they now have 300 million paid subscribers, and free cash flow is growing up significantly since they've had last year. I've never loved the business model of Spotify, particularly with their nuances on the record labels and how much margin those guys get to keep. But, you know, it's a company that's growing, and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people use this. They're going to get to 1 billion users probably in the next couple of years. So stock right there was at 700, down about 1%, but it was down 5%. McDonald's also had earnings. I think they missed on EPS, but that stock's basically flat, up about 0.64%. Oil down 4%. I don't know why Sterling is down 14%. I don't know if they had earnings. This was one of the stocks that exploded this year for AI data center demand as an infrastructure play. They did have earnings today. They beat Q2, 90% revenue growth. EPS is up 116%. Margins went down by 4%. That's probably the reason, 28 to 24, but their growth is up. So they're obviously sacrificing profitability for top line growth. Street doesn't like it today. That stock down about 15%. Nebius, 225. 225. Marvell is also making a move. Oracle, 143. We took this thing down to 114 last week. So many of these names. Now, fear and greed's at 50, so we are done with being in fear. We were in fear for a couple of days last week. We are now in neutral. We are actually 3 points away from greed, to be honest. And that kind of makes sense. S&P at all-time highs, tends to be a bit more greedy. S&P continuing to make all-time highs, 762. But not as greedy or not as fearful as it was last week. Lilly, how's this one? Lilly, I've actually been looking into Lilly a lot more. I had a conversation with someone about, what's that drug called with an R? Retitrude or something? I feel like I'm saying it wrong. But I had a conversation with them about it, and it's the real deal. It's the real deal. By the way, I was researching something last night. They are making sleep peptides. There's this company that's 27 years of your life on average is spent sleeping for 8 hours a day. What if we get that to 4 hours on average by taking a sleep peptide? What if you could condition your body to not have to sleep as much? And you just see where drug discovery is going. I mean, why not? In 50 years, could we have AI help us create a drug that reduces the time that's needed to sleep so that you have more time being alive and being productive? I mean, so Lilly is very interesting because they're a leader in a lot of these emerging categories. And it's definitely what I'm looking at. It's $1 trillion, right? So it's one of those names, if you're buying it, it's not necessarily for alpha. It's for the long-term portfolio of assuming that overall trend continues to go higher. Wow, Palantir, 152 is about 10 cents away. Let's see if we can break through $360 billion market cap here. We have added about $45 billion in market cap today. As the stock right here is up 20.8%. Yeah, but I actually like sleep. I mean, I like sleep too. I'm just saying, 152, there she is. I'm just saying it would be kind of nice to not have to only sleep 8 hours a day. I mean, that is a large part of our life that's sleeping. That's why what's his name, Brian Johnson? Well, he's a big proponent of sleep, but Brian Johnson is, the guy wants to live forever, and he thinks sleep is the best way to more healthily live, which he's right about. But imagine you just didn't need to sleep that much. Robin at 94.39. Because that continues to be green. Omani, Iranian announcement regarding Hormuz expected within hours. Okay, the market's definitely pricing that in. The market is definitely pricing in that we are going to get some type of announcement soon. And if they're not, then today is going to be rippy. I would imagine the market is seeing what's going on with Iran and saying, okay, we're going to get something really good soon. We should front run it. Could be a sell the news, but if it's not, then we are going further up from here. Just a question of when they end up announcing it. By the way, Anthropic signed a $10 billion compute deal with Volta. Does anyone know this startup? It's a startup backed by NVIDIA. The agreement runs 6 years and will be delivered in partnership with BitDeer Technologies, which is a public company. Is that stock up? What's their ticker? That stock's up 12%. BitDeer. I think this used to be a Bitcoin company. A Bitcoin miner. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they used to be a Bitcoin miner. They're now an AI play. It's in Norway, 133 megawatts. It's going to be running NVIDIA's Vera Rubin chips. And Volta announced that it raised $300 million in venture funding, valuing it at $2.4 billion. Kind of crazy that Anthropic signed a $10 billion deal with a startup. So I would imagine there's something special that this company has, either in their geographic location or in their ability to execute on the overall, data center thesis. that got Anthropic's attention. And there you go. Another $10 billion deal being spent on compute. Robin at 94, Rocket Lab 73, SoFi 1827, giving back a little bit of the gains. Seeing some red candles pop up, but overall, relatively green. Snapchat, that's up 11%. Is anyone in Snap? This one making a nice move here today. Okay, it was a Bitcoin miner to AI. So the fact that, that just makes me more excited about Iren. Like, if BitDeer, which from my understanding was much smaller than Iren, could get a $10 billion deal with Anthropic, why can't a lot of these other smaller Bitcoin miners get bigger deals? At that point, it's a question of execution, I would imagine, and I think that's what more people are betting on. Cerebras, that's up 4%. Hut 8 did have earnings. I don't think they were the best, which is why the stock's down 5%. But Hut 8, this is one of the best performing stocks of the year. Quietly, year to date, it is up 107%. So I think this was more, they missed on a couple expectations, but I think this was more price to perfection versus thesis breaker on the stock itself. Will Palantir ever pay a dividend with all the cash they have sitting? I wouldn't want them to, because companies that give dividends are kind of out of the hyper growth phase. Palantir just grew 94%. They don't need to pay a dividend. When a stock goes up 20% in a day, I mean, that is your reward for owning and taking the risk and putting your capital in the stock, not getting 50 cents every quarter for being a shareholder. So no, I don't think they're gonna pay a dividend. I hope they don't pay a dividend for a very long time. I don't need a dividend. I want the stock to go up. And the 9.2 billion in cash, I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but look, it's a great position to be in. I mean, if they need to upgrade sales and marketing, if there's really important equity stakes. By the way, Palantir apparently invested in SpaceX. 3 cents of their EPS came from, I believe, a $72 million SpaceX stake. So I don't know when they invested in SpaceX, but they made about 70 million bucks on it. But yeah, they don't need to give a dividend. They just need to keep growing and use that 9 billion to further grow. I mean, Palantir hasn't done an acquisition from 2016, and the acquisition they did was a very small company back then. So who knows? They usually don't tend to acquire, but maybe there's an opportunity. But I would imagine they just invested in sales and marketing. S&P still all-time highs. That continues to make a move, 760. Oh, we get JOLTS in 13 minutes. Okay, so that's going to be the number of job openings in the country. So far, the JOLTS expectation is 7.4 million. Last quarter was 7.6. So we are looking for above 7.4 million jobs available. Again, the labor market's been doing really, really well this year. If you believe the data, it's not been horrible. Grab up 3% right there. And we just need to continue making sure the labor market is on track to do well. Palantir 151 holding. We've been holding 150, folks. We have been holding 150. Did you buy Palantir recently? I actually bought it yesterday. It was right before earnings, dude. I was like, screw it. I wanted to buy calls yesterday. I had such a freaking feeling that this thing was going to move. About 100 shares at 126 yesterday. I had such a feeling it was going to, and the feeling was just based on, look, the entire market was green and Palantir was up like $1 yesterday. It was just like if they're going to crush earnings, which I was pretty confident of, like, stock should move. But then again, like, what if it didn't? I mean, Robinhood had a blockbuster earnings last week and it didn't move, and it still barely has moved from where it was before earnings. So, to me, that risk of like the market, and that, the last 2 quarters, Palantir's put up results and then the market just said, cool, and took it back down. So I ended up just buying shares, but I mean, it just felt kind of obvious that this was going to have a move. It really did. And so I'm happy we're getting it. I know we're still down year to date. I know we have a lot of room to go higher to get back to where we were, but once again, they are proving where the value in AI is going to. And it's going to companies that are actually making it operational for the enterprise. Austin said I bought a monthly, which isn't like me, and at 3x. Yeah, I don't do like short-term calls either. Like, that's not who I am. But this one like just felt like it was primed to it, but I still chickened out. I still was like, I can't do it. S&P 762, that continues to go green. Are the daily recaps coming back? Well, the daily recaps are now on X. I tried to make videos of daily recaps every day. I just can't do it, guys. Like, the day is just, there is no time in the day to sit down and make a 25-minute video, but the posts on X, people like them. And I think it's a quick read in the morning, especially my international folks. They wake up early in the morning and that's their kind of way to start off the day. So we do have a daily recap every day on X. It's in the description. It's just hard if you're streaming 8 hours a day to then do another video. It makes it tough. Lily right there, 1100, that continues to be green. Okay, JOLTS is in about 10 minutes. We had ISM and the other one, PMI, yesterday that were great. NVIDIA selling off a little bit right here. So you had really good economic numbers in terms of the state of growth in manufacturing yesterday. The question is now, can we follow that up with labor market data? And then can we get oil to come down to really start making a bigger move in terms of risk assets? By the way, the S&P 500 is now worth 69.7 trillion based on this move over the past 2 days. $70 trillion of assets are part of the S&P 500. Salesforce, that's up as well. Can Cactus post the recaps? Usually Cactus does as well. So when I post them on X, he ends up posting it in the WhatsApp. Again, that is the website, cactusjack.com. If you care about second-by-second updates from a real person curating them, you can join that. It's free. Links to your WhatsApp. If you want to pay $5 a month to support, you can. But if not, it's free. And yeah, that's how you can get all of the information around these markets. AXTI, why is that down 12%? That should be up today, dude. That should be up 12%. The photonics names are going crazy. That's actually very surprising that one's going down. But again, this thing was up 70% last week or something, right? Oh, they source from China. Oh yeah, that's kind of obvious. Yeah, I should have realized that. If you source heavily from China, it's actually bad news. Some of the other photonics names do as well, but like Light, Coherent, I think they're a bit more US based. And so that's probably why they're getting some love. Yeah, you guys are right. Technically, that does make sense. It should be down given their sourcing from China. Nebius, did we get a dump here? 227 to 220, still up 4%, but kind of the trend every day, I think you guys have noticed now, is the semis will pump into the open and then there will be some give back. Now, it's been a different sector every day. Yesterday was memory. Today it looks like it's the neoclouds, or is it Nebius in particular? Yeah, it's the neoclouds. CoreWeave also getting a little bit of some candles. But it's not been a unilateral semi rally every day or semi dip every day. Broadcom up 5% right here. That usually doesn't move that aggressively, but it is. And some of the other smaller names are taking the smaller beating. Voyager, I did not go through their earnings, but apparently they crushed it, up 24%. This is effectively a small company, 2 billion market cap. I really did not look into any of their numbers, but from what I understood, their defense contracting business and their space ties are doing very well. Palantir has, I believe, invested and partnered with Voyager. And if they didn't invest, they definitely partnered with them about 2 years ago. So there is a Palantir connection here. But I have to go through those earnings tonight and get a better understanding of this. SpaceX, are we red? We are not red, but 121 to 116 has come down a little. Where's our 10-year yield? 10-year yield is at 4.63. Okay, so thank goodness. This thing is starting to come down. I think a deal with Iran will officially get it to come down. We needed to go back into that 4.5 range to get there. Iranian source tells Reuters that Tehran wants control over inbound traffic and visibility, outbound shipping the Strait of Hormuz under a temporary plan discussed with Oman to reopen the waterway. Okay, so whatever the negotiation of this new plan comes out to be, we should be finding out relatively soon. And if we do, there should be a better understanding of how the market interprets it. By the way, Representative April McLean just filed a financial disclosure. That person is Maryland's South 6th District. I don't know if she's Republican or Democrat, but she just bought ENTG, which is actually a name we've talked about before, Integris, up 9% right there. Very similar to Amcor. Not exactly, but kind of in that same line. And a big part of the overall semiconductor supply chain. So that's an interesting one. Buying Integris right here, 135.74. She also bought SCI Service Corp International. That's down 1%. I have no idea what that company does, but Integris is a bit more well-known in the AI supply chain stack. SPY, 763. Look at that candle on SPY, dude. Goodness, buyers have come in heavy. Heavy buyers coming in. It's nice to see that right here. I mean, could you guys imagine we hit 77, 7,800 and maybe then we cool off for a bit? But even in the worst of the July drawdown, we went to like 730, 729. So you're seeing some of that momentum really get baked in right there. AAOI, that's up 16. SoFi, 1821, and then Microsoft's flipping green again today. Yeah, Nebius starting to fade out. Same thing with Hoodie. Again, every day it's been. This is the thing. I don't think we're out of the woods in terms of sentiment. We're definitely past Nebius 140 and Hood 70. Like we're past those levels, but I don't know. Like in April and May, it was just like every day 4 or 5% up, and the next thing you look up, Nebius is 300, right? That's how Robinhood was in 2025. Next thing you look up, Robinhood's 150 from like $7. Like it was kind of crazy. And now the rallies get sold into. You just have a lot more sellers that take advantage of the strength. I think you have a lot more traders entering into these names as well. It's good for my covered calls. Yeah, it's definitely probably not hurting. And Nebby still pays amazing premiums. Tesla 322. So what do we think Elon's going to say on the call today? Because I really think they need a big deal. I don't think the actual business itself from a connectivity or Starlink perspective is going to grow that massively. I think they need to announce like another $10-15 billion deal with a cloud computing player, but they can't do OpenAI because Elon hates OpenAI. They can't do Anthropic because they already did Anthropic. They just did Google. Like, who's left for them to really get some money from? And then if the earnings are mediocre and you've got a share unlock coming and the sentiment is just like, oh, whatever. I know it's down a lot, but like, I don't know. What if that just like completely falls out at that point? So I think we're going to have to see what actual number they can put out. By the way, Palantir's RPO, $5 billion in remaining performance obligations. So you have a significant amount of obligations they can turn to revenue. Also, again, last week, Citadel scared everybody, but equity funds globally in tech, 15.7 billion of inflows, the third largest weekly inflow on record. The fourth consecutive weekly inflow of over 10 billion. The 4-week average of inflows into tech is up to a record 14 billion. This is 115% above the previous record in 2025 and 180% above the record in 2021. So in the midst of tech being sold off, it is once again always been, like it has been for the past 4 years, a buy the dip. Now, that doesn't mean that dip gets rewarded immediately, but over a year, 2, 3 years, the dip in tech continues to reward because tech has the best margins, tech has the best earnings, tech has the best trajectory for future earnings. And particularly in America, most people want to invest in American tech companies that are at the center of AI. So the liquidity for these tech names is massive. Wow, are we going for 154? Are we actually going for it here? 10 cents away, 153.96. Palantir is the only name holding up. I mean, everything's had a little bit of a red candle after it's green. It's the only one that just keeps trying to move high. 154, there she is. Wow. I mean, 163 was the high back on May 31st, so we are not that far away. We are not that far away. I was talking to a friend yesterday, good friend of mine. It's not Triple V. Before I say this, you guys are gonna think of Triple V. I promise he has enough of a Palantir position, but I was talking to a friend. Friends, bit on the wealthier side. He bought 500,000 shares of Palantir during the dip, like 110, 120 range. And he texted me yesterday. He's like, I don't think it's healthy for me to open my portfolio tomorrow. It's like, it's not healthy, but you deserve to look at it. It was not Triple V. Triple V has much more than 500,000 shares of Palantir that he bought at $20. But it was another friend. And he just told me the other day, I was like, really? He was like, yeah, dude. He was like, they're growing. I was like, all right. And, yesterday was a pretty good earnings for him. So it's not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, a 22% move, 60 billion in market cap. There's a lot of people benefiting from this. Yes, it was Steve, actually. That was I bought 100 shares yesterday. He bought 500,000 shares, but no, it's not Steve. It was a different friend. But I mean, look, if you take the risk with your capital, you deserve to be rewarded with it, especially if you take the risk during a dip, because that's when, no one wants to take the risk. All right, JOLTS, 7.359 versus 7.4. That's basically coming in line. Very, very, very small miss. S&P 500 right there, 763.48. Get an update on that, but I don't think the market should care that much about those numbers.
Expected to be right around 7.455 million, and it comes in on the light side, 7,359,000. That would be the lightest rate going back to March of this year when we were under 6.9 million. Now, if we look at factory orders, this is a fresh June number, expecting up 2/10s, comes in down 3/10s. Down 3/10s, of course, compares to last month, down 1.3, which makes it, unfortunately, the best month since it was positive over 5 in April. Now, if we take transportation away, it's still a negative number, expecting up 4/10s ex-trans. We're now down 4/10s. That would be the lightest number going back to April of 25. Now, let's look at durable goods. And remember, these are final reads. So unlike factory orders, we had a mid-month June. These replaced that. So the headline number was up 3/10s. It improves to up 5/10s. That would be the best read since it was up over 8 in April of this year. Ex-transportation, we see that the number improves rather markedly. We see it's up 7/10s ex-transportation, and that would be the best read since May when it was up 1.8%. Now, let's get to the orders side of the equation. Capital good orders, non-defense ex-aircraft, proxy for capital spending, something to pay attention to. This is a powerful number, up 1.2%. Very strong number. That would be the strongest number since March, which was the high water mark, up 3.8. So these have been very, very solid numbers. And finally, if we look at shipments versus orders, also been on the high side, comes in up 2%. We're expecting a number a little below that level. Up 2% would be the best level going back to December of 21. December of 21 when it was up 2.1%. So those are very good numbers. They point to some better activity down the road. How did all this square with the markets? Well, we see that we are now down about 5.5, 6 basis points in a 10-year.
Okay, so the 10-year likes it, oil likes it. These numbers aren't really relevant enough, I think, to get the market to react very aggressively up or down, but the S&P just continues holding on and making new all-time highs. 764, again, not a massive move on those numbers, but we were at 763.90, so extra 10 cents just bumped it over. As per Rubio, there's been progress made in talks with Iran to reopen the strait, so now this is another source outside of Bessent, Trump, and the Iranians, that it's time to open up the strait. I think that actually is way more impactful than this JOLTS data. 764.09, almost another 1% of the S&P. Yesterday was 1.5%, so if we get 1%, that would be 2.5% in 2 days on the S&P 500, which is basically 30% of its average yearly gain. So, I mean, this 2-day stretch would be pretty aggressive to the upside. Palantir loses 154, but holding on to the 150s, 152.78, Robinhood 91.55, Iren, that's up 2, Oracle, that's up 2, Spotify at 487. Spotify was red 7%, that flipped green. Grab is really trying to go for $4. Again, they're going to buy back almost $1 billion of stock on $10 billion of enterprise value. I would think at some point the market recognizes that as well, but again, adjusted EBITDA up 50%, revenue growth 20%. By the way, this is all without the Food Panda acquisition, which is going to close by the end of this year. I mean, they can accelerate revenue growth to 30 to 35%. I think it's very possible for them to do that. And when they do that, trading at the multiple they're trading at, I think it just becomes a better bet. So we're going to see how the street prices it. But overall, you're seeing some of that get more priced in for many of the different names that have started to accelerate growth, especially your names that are beating EPS expectations dramatically. Microsoft, $492. Look at that. AMD, wow. Talk about beating growth expectations. If Lisa Su can deliver tonight, I think it might be priced in, but if you deliver, it doesn't matter. The street will be happy, especially in the space that Lisa Su is in. Also, I think everyone's waiting for AMD to get to $1 trillion. So if she really delivers, maybe Wall Street's just like, screw it. It should be $1 trillion company. Deserves to be $1 trillion. And 600 is the magic number to get there. Also, Meta and OpenAI get 10% of the company when it gets there as well. So that'd be catalyst for them. Micron right there, 5.8%. And again, Meta and OpenAI, when they have 10% of the company, they'd be very incentivized to make sure the company does well. I mean, they're already incentivized because they have that equity grant, but like I would just imagine they can definitely lock in those orders from Meta and OpenAI after they become $1 trillion company, because Zucks wouldn't want that equity to go down. AMD up 7% right there. Nebius 218. Intel almost at 100 again. The good thing about this market is, like, if you're beating your earnings and doing it decisively, even if your stock takes a bit of a dip, you start to see it move back up. We saw that with Grab today. We saw that with SoFi last week. We've obviously seen that with Palantir today, as they've crushed earnings. Even though the last 2 earnings, they weren't respected. Like, at some point, if you just keep on executing, the market gets a bit more excited to, I mean, Microsoft, prime example, Amazon, prime example, Google, even though it's sold off, prime example, Meta, although there's good execution, I think there's some other corresponding issues that are taking it down, but I think that'll be the same story in the future as well. Wow, S&P, we are really going for it. Maybe 765. Bloom's up 40% in 6 days. They had a fantastic earnings as well. Microsoft 500 seems kind of inevitable. Last time Microsoft was 500 was July 2025, and then it went to into a nasty 30% drawdown. But it looks like things are changing here for it. Rubio says nothing final is on Hormuz, but we're hoping an agreement will happen shortly. Oil, are we still down? Oil, wow, guys, it's down even more. 75. That's 77 in the morning. I mean, you're starting to see it significantly come down. Let's get a little bit more of an update on those JOLTS numbers. But I mean, if we get into the low 70s and then into the 60s, we're right back where we were in the beginning of June.
So there was a thought that they should and could raise interest rates to back up that claim. He did not. And as a result, afterwards, we did see yields go up pretty much across the board. And so it stirred this debate about Fed credibility and the strategy and whether it's refreshing, as Charlie Sharp just told you guys, the CEO of Wells Fargo.
Yes, I was hoping you'd refer to that.
Yeah, or whether it's, problematic. So Jan Hatzius actually published on this today, the head economist at Goldman Sachs. And he said this whole idea that the markets would basically learn to play ball, not the referee. That's what Warsh said. He said the problem with this approach is that the participants in short-term interest rate markets, where Fed communication matters most, price what they think the Fed will do, not what it should do. So this remains true if the FOMC provides less information about its reaction function, except that the markets will then be more error prone. In other words, if Warsh is looking to the markets to do the Fed's work for them, the market is looking for Warsh to see what they think he's going to do, not necessarily what should be done and what the policy should be. Hatia says such a shift will not provide policymakers with more reliable information. It could, however, lengthen the lags of monetary policy and introduce unnecessary volatility into financial conditions and the real economy. It feels like a lot of the economists are kind of like wary of this whole strategy, and a lot of the CEOs embrace it.
I mean, Charlie Sharp sat there less than an hour ago. To your point, when I asked him why it was refreshing, he sort of said all the voices out there, they just share their opinions. They aren't, and it's many months from now. I don't know, Carl. I hope I'm paraphrasing.
No, I mean, but I chuckle because that continues.
whether it's Paulson today or Waller or Logan or Hammock, we're still getting a healthy diet of people who may or may not disagree with the chair.
Well,
dude, there's no way Hammock and Waller and all these guys are going to want to cut if oil substantially comes down. Wow, look at Microsoft, full 1% on the day. There's just no way. If we actually get oil down, it's not happening. Oh my, option flow. Someone just bought $13 million of Microsoft calls. September 18th strike, 510. Or sorry, September 18th expiry, 510 strike. Yeah, Microsoft's going to 500. Because no one's buying 13 million of Microsoft calls at 510 in 3 months for it to not go. This is going higher, bro. Someone bought those Nebius 380 calls yesterday. Dude, every time I announce one of these, so many of you in the chat are like, that was me. That was me. If it's all of you guys buying freaking $20, $30 million of call options, then can you tell us before you buy it in the chat? Just let us know. Because that probably helps spike the stock. Microsoft right there, 493.80. Wong, that was me. Robert, that was me. Gavin, that was me. Is this the top? I don't know. What do people think? Are we feeling toppy? Are we feeling risk-offy? Are we feeling like it's a good day to sell some covered calls? Good day to take some exposure off? I think we need more data, but dude, July was so bad that I think a lot of these names were covering. I mean, CoreWeave is still down. How much is CoreWeave down from the absolute top? CoreWeave got to 187. So it's still down 50%. If we use the 6-month range, it got to 138. So 138 minus 90. That's still 53%. It's, I mean, like, you still have a decent amount of that's 34%. 34%. So you're still 34% down from the highs, 50% down from the max all-time highs. Is Corey going to top out at 90? Like, I just find that hard to believe. A lot of times topping is a process of the entire market agreeing that it's time to go down. Same thing with bottoming, which is basically what we saw on Wednesday when Leopold got liquidated. Palantir trying to go for 155. And I don't think we're in that process right now. Now, are we getting a little bit more greedy? Sure. Like, I don't think Amazon and Microsoft are the best risk rewards anymore. Like they made the run. Like, they gave you ample amount of time to buy the dip. I would not be chasing this. Now, Meta, I think, is a really good risk reward, but Meta, with these stupid lawsuits and everyone's suing them for getting kids addicted to social media, that might actually be a legit concern. I mean, they flagged it on their earnings for a reason. So I think that's part of the headwind around this, along with the lack of, excitement around their compute business. But the other ones, they made their move. And so I think we can squeeze more out of them this year, but it's not like they're trading at stupid levels anymore. Palantir very close to 155. Is NVIDIA a good risk reward? Yeah, but again, NVIDIA is kind of like the market, right? So for NVIDIA to go up, I still believe the broader market is still 8.5% of the S&P. NVIDIA hasn't made the move that a lot of those other names have made. But once again, it's the world's largest company. And so I guess it just takes time. I still believe 230-ish is my personal target by the end of the year for NVIDIA. If it goes higher than that, I'd be happy. But I'm just skeptical, and it has nothing to do with NVIDIA. It has to do with, will this market? Because I feel like to have NVIDIA 250, 260, you need S&P like 82, 8,300. And I don't know if we get that high from here. Like, if we just straight up V-shape like March 30th and we go, then amazing. But if not, then, there's going to be some dips in between that we have to navigate. Wow, 155. $30 on the day. Should have bought those damn calls. Dude, when's the last time we had $30 on the day for Palantir? By the way, none of the other software names are really moving that much. I mean, IGV is up 3%, but your Salesforces, your Adobes, are they moving? We didn't look at them. In the morning, they weren't. No, ServiceNow is up 1%. Salesforce is up 1%. Snowflake's up 2%. Yeah, none of these are like 7, 8% moves. This is just Palantir by itself at 22% on this one. Dan Niles is tweaking on CNBC. We've got to watch that. We've got to see him tweak out. Let's see why he's tweaking out. Have you heard anything on the Grand Theft Auto trailer that was supposed to come out in July? I have not. I have not been covering Take-Two as aggressively, but I think everyone's waiting on that trailer. Wow, Reddit. I didn't even see that today. Look at Reddit go. They gave this to us at 135 last week. For 180% earnings growth, they thought the stock should be down 30% after beating every expectation. Guided. They bought back $230 million of their own stock. Like anything you could ask from a management team, they executed on. And they took it down 30%. Like it was just last week was filled with irrational moves. And you're starting to see that come back. Are you covering AMD tonight? Yes, I'm covering AMD. If I wasn't covering AMD, I think you guys would find me and literally kill me. So I learned my lesson a year ago. I interrupted the AMD earnings call. And oh boy, did you guys let me know in the chat to never interrupt Lisa Su and her CFO. So I learned my lesson. Here's Dan Niles right now on CNBC.
Anthropic was on the board of Figma, right? It's like, a new database. Then yes, you need their highest end models for that. So I think they're two separate issues, and I believe in open source, and I believe that companies should try to keep all their proprietary data proprietary and not share it, because that's where problems get created.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm curious. I mean, I know you're a public market investor, but you know the private market valuations of both OpenAI and Anthropic. Do you think they're overvalued?
Well, I mean, I think, let me answer that differently. If you were going to a world where 90% of the companies aren't using the leading edge models and they're switching to using open source models, then kind of, if you're using the right model for the right thing, you don't need a Ferrari to go to the corner store to get milk, right? A Ford will work just fine. And so if you're going ahead and you're starting to split the workloads that way, I think over time, my belief is that the model layer becomes more of a community.
Okay, so kind of the same take we've heard by multiple people. Are you guys starting to notice how many people are latching onto this argument that the company that's up 25% today has been making for 3 years, which is that the models are a commodity. They don't really matter. They're important, but you use the open source ones for certain tasks, you use the frontier labs for certain tasks. You are not going to be beholden to give your enterprise IP, your livelihood, your employees' livelihood to Anthropic or OpenAI. Like, you're just not going to, you're especially not going to do that if you're a government. So why is Palantir just breaking through 156? I think the market's really looking at this like, all right, where's the value going to go to? It's obviously going to go to Micron because you need memory to make these models. It's obviously going to go to NVIDIA. It's obviously going to go to Intel. It's obviously going to go to AMD. It's going to go to Lumentum. It's going to go to Nebius. It's going to go to all these names that help you build the compute. But then it's got to go somewhere that makes the compute valuable in a business context, in a governmental context. And that's not the models. That's not OpenAI, which kind of scares me for their IPOs, because I've come to the point where I don't want to buy the IPO at all. At all. I know Anthropic was the one that I think most people want to buy. S&P a full up 1% of the day. I'm kind of scared to buy. Like, their growth is amazing, but eventually that's going to slow down. And where is their margin going to come from? Like, it makes me not want to pay $1 trillion for it. I'd rather pay $350 billion for Palantir. And so that shift is starting to become more common for a lot of people to think about. And if that's the case, a lot of money's got to be reallocated, which is why I think Leopold wasn't easily able to sell some of his Anthropics. It was reported that he was trying to find a buyer at 1.1 trillion and he really couldn't. It's maybe because some people are like, I don't really know if we definitely want to buy this here. Nebius taking a bit of a hit from the highs, 227 to 217, still up 3% on the day. Palantir, I think, just having the best day in the entire market. I think we're about to go for 157, guys. This is a massive, massive move. Like, this is a gigantic move that we're seeing right here. 156.47 on the day. Zeta is going to be a big one after. So I'm going to cover all the earnings, but again, AMD is the one we're going to listen to. So that'll be the one to watch. But we have Zeta, SpaceX. I mean, I would love to listen to SpaceX, to be honest. But I know a lot of you guys have AMD, so we'll listen to AMD. But we have Arista, A-Lab, TMDX, Pinterest, Paramount, The Win, Open Door, Upstart, Toast. You got a lot of companies today reporting. But we'll listen to AMD. When does nuclear take flight? You know, there's a nuclear startup that just got $1 billion from Sequoia. Forgot the name of them, but I don't know when, but I think nuclear will happen. I mean, China's already operationalizing nuclear in a meaningful way. I mean, Oklo is not that hated by on the street. Same thing with SMR. They have price targets that are relatively high. It's just they haven't gotten the types of contracts that would, Valor Atomic, that would get the street to be like, we have to buy it right now. But I think there will be one day where like Oklo announces a $5 billion deal with the DOE, and then boom, it gets re-rated. It's just not the easiest bet because you don't have that much vision into the technology. Even though I feel like it will be kind of like a fuel cell technology thing that Bloom has done. It's going to be very useful. It's just going to take some time. Like it took Bloom time to actually make it happen. It's crypto dumping, BTC. It is indeed a little dumpy dump. Where's MSTR? That's down to 93. Where's the stretch preferreds? It's still below par. All right, so still 8% below. It was at 100 for longest. Now it's at 92.76. Yeah, guys, I don't really understand though. I mean, it got to the point with Hood where I was like looking at leaps yesterday. I haven't bought any, but like, I mean, this is I'm trying to figure out what the street is upset about. Like in this type of a rally, Hood should be moving, like really moving. And I think maybe it's the prediction markets. And as much as they're growing, I think the street's a little scared that the next political administration is going to get rid of this shit pretty soon. And all that juicy prediction market revenue for Kalshi, Polymarket, Hood, it's going to be subsumed very quickly. Because that's the only reason I can think of. It's not their crypto business, not equities, not trading, not options. You have insider. You had an insider buy 50 million a month ago. Like it's not like you have massive insider selling or anything. I don't know. Spotify, that's up 1. As that continues to go green. It's not about Bitcoin, dude. Like even with, first of all, they beat on their crypto estimates, but second of all, Robinhood Chain is the new ecosystem they're building for crypto, and that people are trading a lot of stuff independently outside of BTC on that chain. So I don't even think it has to do with crypto sentiment. I think it might be because the street's not believing the semiconductor rally as much as we want it to. And if Robinhood's a proxy to effectively semis being traded, because that's the nature of this bull market, like all the money going to semis, then if retail stops trading that as aggressively, maybe Robinhood's volumes go down, although, they said Q3 is tracking up with Q2, so I'm not sure. What happened to Cypher earnings? I have not looked at Cypher. Are they red? They are down 13%. Let's see. What was bad about Cypher? It's dropping with the neoclouds as well. Cypher, they missed by 160% on EPS, 25 cents versus 65. Revenue, 24 versus 31. Revenue's down 40% year over year. EPS is down 442% year over year. I do not follow this that closely. I know they have a Google backstop, right? Them and Wolf. But yeah, you can't miss your numbers that badly as a neocloud. It's just a lot of that legacy Bitcoin business also kind of messes up these numbers. I have a Rubio clip right here. Let's pull this up. Would you gamble on AMD earnings? No. The reason for why Palantir it kind of made sense to me, even though I was still too chicken to do it yesterday, is that the stock was at 120 on a green day, and it was down 30% of the year. AMD is up a lot this year, and AMD now above 500. I mean, if you really think it could rally to 600, yeah, but otherwise, like, I don't know. It's made a big move going into the print, so the question is just, can it get that really, really big move into all-time highs? Here was Rubio about 20 minutes ago.
I think that there's a conversation and negotiation that we are involved in between Oman and Iran on how more ships can be able to go through there safely in the short term as we move towards these longer-term talks about denuclearization. And suffice it to say, there's been progress made in those talks, but not finality yet. We're hoping that will happen very shortly.
Okay, so you've got some level of excitement there. Then here's what Bessent said earlier today as well.
What's breaking? We are getting at the CNBC Sport.
And it moved towards a more normalized position in this conflict. I think it would be freedom of movement. And even though things are still a little dicey there over the past few days, we saw quite a few ships coming out even now. So, I'd expect the energy prices to settle back down, which, as I said, will be good for the entire world.
That was Treasury Secretary Bessent.
So you got Bessent, Rubio, and Trump making the argument that we're going to get this deal. They're going to look really stupid if we don't get a deal anytime soon, or at least a framework of a deal or a MOU, whatever the hell they want to call it. They got to give us something soon if they're all talking about it. As Palantir, it's 157. Goodness, man. What a day. $30 on the day, $31 up 25%. SPY basically at all-time highs. So I think we're going to get it. And if we get it, we should be able to make a better move here, hopefully. What do you think of Klarna? I don't get Klarna. I think it's obviously cheaper than we're raised in the private markets years ago. But speaking of the private markets, do you guys know a company called Airtable? Airtable was one of the poster childs of SaaS back in 2021. They raised at a $12 billion valuation. An Italian holding company called Bending Spoons bought them today for $1.4 billion. Or sorry, $1.25 billion. I mean, talk about a down round, bro. They raised $1.4 billion over the past 10 years. They got sold for $1.28, and they had $1 billion in cash. That's how bad they have $1 billion in cash, but they still had to sell after raising $1.4 billion for $1.2 billion after they were raised. They were valued at $12 billion in 2021 because this is one of those last ditch efforts. You kind of have to sell at that point, right? It's like from my understanding, it's a project management software for the enterprise, and they still did $400 million in ARR, growing 20% last year. So some of those SaaS companies, which aren't really producing much value for the enterprise or making AI meaningful, they get killed. And I think that's what we saw today. Klarna is not in the same boat, but again, the buy now, pay later, there's just a lot of other companies that do buy now, pay later. And Klarna was worth $40 billion in 2021. Now it's worth 11. So to get back to those valuations, I just feel like it's going to be tougher. It's good that they ended up going public so they could get access to the liquidity, but I'm not sure how aggressive that would be able to play out. Yeah, WebXL. That's exactly how you could think of them. And I remember in 2021 looking into their valuation, and there's like half the Fortune 100 use the they're in a lot of places in the enterprise, but they're just obviously not producing enough momentum and excitement to grow or to even think of going public, which is why the street hasn't allowed them to go public and why they ended up getting acquired. Palantir 158. Oh my goodness. By the way, for everyone who is screaming about customer count, Palantir did almost $2 billion in revenue with 1,000 customers. I have a stat for you guys. 0.1% of AWS companies, which by the way, AWS companies or customers, 4.18 million customers AWS has that uses them to some extent. 0.1% of those 4.18 million companies spend $1.2 million a year or more. A high customer count doesn't matter. What matters is the value you're providing to those customers. And if you can get $2 billion in 90 days off 1,000 people, it means you're providing a shit ton of value. It's just that simple. It is really quality over quantity. And now what happens when those 1,000 customers becomes 2,000? And they're still getting the same value. That's where the multi-trillion-dollar thesis starts to become actually exciting to look at for Palantir and plausible. But yeah, the customer count thing is not the big concern, I think, that some people were pointing out. It's well, look at the customers. It's who cares about if they're having less customers and caring more about the customers and they're getting paid more, then customer count will naturally solve itself. But revenue growth is what matters more. NVIDIA 210 as that continues to go green. What do you think about OSS on earnings? I think OSS is going to have good earnings. I just think the stock doesn't really move on earnings. The stock moves on government contracts. Even the last earnings, I believe they announced a new contract, if I'm not wrong, and that's what really pumped it from 9 to 16. So I think OSS will be fine. It's one of the better small caps that's out there in the defense space. But Edge AI is a theme that's working. As long as they announce more deals in that thematic, I think the company can get re-rated, and it honestly did get re-rated over the past year, right? The stock was like $4, now it's 13. AMD, are we at 520? We are very close, 517. You now have to take Jose out to dinner. Yes, now I can afford to take Jose out to dinner. Dude, I've been trying to take him to dinner, but like he has a family, so he's kind of busy. But then he gets on the stream and he's like, Amit's not taking me out to dinner. It's like, bro, you're the one with the kid. It's obviously hard to plan a dinner with you. But we're gonna have to. By the way, I've met him in person many times because we've been at events. There was actually a really, really funny moment we had in the car. He was like, we were leaving a. I did have dinner with. We went to a steakhouse in Vegas. We did have dinner together. Acting like we never had dinner together, but we were coming back from a steakhouse, and he was calling his wife, and he was, just telling her good night, I love you, and I was like, yo, Jose, where the strippers at? He was like, bro, shut the fuck up. It was hilarious, bro. It was great. It was the best thing. She obviously knew I was joking, but it was fun. So yeah, we did get dinner. I'm literally just reminding myself we freaking got dinner. So next time he says that, I'm like, hold on, bro. We definitely had dinner. Write it right there. 159. 159.40. Bloom, that's still up 6. Bloom is still up 6. Grab trying to get back to 4, 380, Intel 99. And then Palantir is still making its move here up to 158. JOLTS, what were JOLTS? 7.4 million. So the street didn't care too much about that. But it's actually good they came in a little bit lower than expected for the inflation expectations, but overall the market didn't care. Oh, Burry was short Caterpillar. You're right. When did he start shorting it though? So Burry added to his Q shorts, his semi shorts, his Nvidia shorts since Thursday. He's still claiming all of this is a dead cat bounce. I think he's still up on his Caterpillar short. I think he shorted it around 1,000. So he's probably still up on that. But I mean, it's not like that short is going into a full-on downtrend. The Palantir short, definitely, if he still has those puts. I mean, dude, $50 for Palantir, really, by 2027? Like, if he actually, I mean, I would love to see him double down. I would genuinely love to see him double down on that. Because I think even he would be like, no, this is like, there's no way. Rubrik got an upgrade to $100 actually. That's why Rubrik's up 6%. But a lot of the cybersecurity names getting some love. Palo Alto, Cloudflare, Fastly I think is up today. Yeah, the CDN's getting some love. DigitalOcean. Their ticker always looks like DocuSign to me. They tanked on their earnings, but now they're starting to recover. The earnings were actually really good. They had preliminary earnings. I just think a lot of it was priced in because they gave the results a few weeks ago. But stock's basically flat now. Well, what do you think about Robinhood's venture fund? I've just never been a fan of investing in the venture fund, guys. I didn't invest in the first one. I don't like these private VC ETFs. So I don't even know what they're going to invest in, but I'm just not a big fan of it. Like, I'd rather find private allocation myself. Or I'd want to know they're getting a real deal. Like I know they invested in Canva and Stripe, but did they get a really good deal? Or when those companies go public, it's going to be, relatively the same valuation that they invested in. So to me, those are not the most attractive assets, but I think it's good for Hood because it's just another stream of revenue for them. Oh yeah, YC. No, I did see that headline. It is YC companies. Yeah, so you're right. They're investing. Essentially, YC is an incubator in Silicon Valley, and they give you like $150,000 for 7% of your company, which is a pretty predatory. I mean, like they take a lot of your company for not that much. But granted, they're giving it to just ideas, not really full startups. And so Robinhood's investing in a lot of those batches. But the problem is most of them fail, right? Like most YC companies, like you get the Airbnbs sometimes, but a lot of them fail. So I don't know. If you're investing in 80 of them to find the one that works, that is typically what a VC does, but I kind of just rather buy Hood stock because if it works, then it'll help Hood, right? But that might be their new strategy they're going for. 158.23. Let me check 160 resistance for Mr. Palantir. 160 resistance is 183,000 shares. 183,000 shares here today. MicroStrategy's up 1%. Ondas up 4%. Thoughts on emerging biological computing tech? I have no opinion on emerging biological computing tech. I mean, if you're talking about technology that helps like biology companies like biotechs, just not my forte. I don't even know how to analyze biotechs. From my understanding, that's why Epsilera, I've never really understood it because it's like, it's a biotech. Like if their drugs fail, this thing goes to zero. So the potential is massive. And I get the Peter Thiel connection is great, but like, if you don't know the science behind it, like I don't know how you invest in some of this stuff. Like there's some companies where you can invest even if you don't really understand what the company does, because you can look at growth and earnings and this and look at their sector, competitors. But with biotech, I feel like that's impossible. Like you have to know what the hell you're investing in. Microsoft, almost 500. Is this trying to get a bigger move? Is oil still down? 76. It's actually up a little bit, 75, 76. But we talked about Grab in the beginning of the stream. You can go back to it, listen to it. I'll have a write-up on X pretty soon today. But they crushed every number they needed to crush. And again, to me, I understand the stock's not moving like crazy, but it's not even about the stock. It's like, okay, if the company keeps moving in this direction, I mean, they're going to be one of the biggest growth stocks in the entire market. That's sustainable. That's not just going to be because of AI. And like we're talking about 30, 40% compounded growth for a decade. Like that is something that I believe will be re-rated in a much more valuable way, especially now that they're profitable. But it is nice to see it trying to crack back up into that $4 range. The Q's right there. Wow, 715. AXTI also was down 13. That has now made a decent amount of comeback as it's still down 1%. You're still traumatized by Purple Biotech. I am still traumatized by PPBT. How is this company still public, bro? Look at their max. They were trading at $13,900. They're now trading at $1.44. This is the one biotech I trusted, and it didn't work. And by the way, the biotech stuff is crazy because I joined like a cult essentially for Purple Biotech back in 2020. Like I was legit in a cult. Like seriously, I was in a cult. There was like a leader of the cult. His name was Brad. I'm not even joking. His name was Brad. He was like a chemical engineer. He had convinced all of us. We were in this group that like Purple Biotech is going to solve he's like, buy every fucking share you can. And like, I believed him. I was like 22 years old. I was like, yeah, this stock's $1. I'm buying as much as I can. And then the stock kept going down. And the dude was like, the drugs are working. The NT219, that was the molecule. NT219. And I was like, yeah, it is working. And then like the trials didn't really work that much. And I was like, well, it didn't work on some people, but it'll work on other people. And then I woke up one day and I was like, dude, I'm down 95% of that. I need to move on. And then I found another stock that started with P. And I became the cult leader instead. That was Palantir. That one ended up working out. So, but yeah, biotech is tough. Biotech was tough. Do you think there's a software rotation? I think there is. No, I think it's everything. There's no rotation anymore. Like everything's moving. Software's up, hyperscalers are up, semis are up. Some of them are giving back some of their gains from yesterday. But I think we might be out of this nonsense. Micron's up, Palantir's down 5% because Micron's up 5%. Like I think Leopold was the culprit for that. Literally his fund was short every software name, long every semi name. And I'm pretty sure every other fund was copying his strategy. And so it's just a bunch of funds that piled onto this pair trade. And then he got blown up. And I think a lot of the funds were like, okay, this is like not something we can use anymore because everyone knows about the trade. It's not working, especially as the software companies put up really good earnings like Palantir did. Marvell right there up 10%. So Citadel was technically the hero. Honestly, as much as shit we give Ken Griffin, yeah. I mean, he technically took the margin out of the leverage out of the AI trade, which caused some really painful days, basically a painful month. But, you know, now the leverage is gone and he ripped the Band-Aid off effectively. And sometimes you need to do that. Now, he recognized that the Band-Aid was starting to get ready to come off, and he kind of went in and just fully ripped it. He didn't have to be that aggressive about it, but he did it. And it was Leopold's fault for getting that leverage in the first place. But I think it might have gotten rid of these like stupid dynamics where some stocks have to go down for other stocks to go up, as if like Micron and Microsoft are not going to benefit from the AI revolution, which is the most frustrating part about the first 6 months of the year. It's like it just felt like that was kind of dumb. NABI's back to 220, up 3.6. Mid, do you think Palantir's buy here? I almost bought it for earnings, but before hate doing that. Look, I wouldn't chase after a 30% run. Now, long term, once again, honestly, I've been thinking about this more and more throughout the course of the year. Like a lot of my long-term portfolio, I just want more Palantir and Hood. And I know that's super basic, but like I really just want more Palantir Hood. Like they're the two companies I understand the most. I get them. I believe in them. I believe in their founders so deeply. I understand their TAM. I understand their execution. And it's like, I think it's cool to sometimes have a bunch of different stocks and talk about them. And that's important to be able to analyze stuff. But like, I also just want more of those two names. So yeah, if you're buying it today after this run because you think long-term you're going to hold it, sure. But it's up 26%. It could go down 7% tomorrow for the hell of it. Oh, wow. I didn't even notice. Palantir 159. All right, 160. Whoever has 183,000 shares, please take us out right here and get us up there. Let's see if we can do that. But yeah, I've been thinking about them more. And, I was supposed to do this year, but it didn't end up happening. I think what we're going to do to start 2027, and I really want to do this and like make it public so that it's out there, is I want to actually start a public portfolio that I manage. And that way no one has to ask, what's the year to date? What's the cost basis? It's just there. Like I'm gonna make a website connected to my Robinhood, and every single move we make every day will be in public and people will be able to track it publicly. And that will be like a microcosm of my broader portfolio, even though my broader portfolio, again, it has like a lot of these cornerstones like Hood and Palantir that I can't replicate because I can't go back in time and buy those names. But I was supposed to do it this year. It didn't end up happening this year. I think next year that will be the goal. And that way, it'll first of all give me experience managing an active portfolio that's dedicated to a certain set of objectives, not just like my portfolio with my personal net worth and stuff. Like it would be easier to actively manage that. And then B, it would like allow us to be directional and make positions and switch strategies and all that stuff in real time. So that's good. No, it's not starting an ETF. It's just going to be like a public challenge portfolio. And, people will be able to track it publicly so that I don't get a million questions every day about what's happening. Everyone will just be able to see it. So that's the idea. We're going to probably try to make that happen. Because in my long-term portfolio, dude, I want to keep it kind of boring. I just want to buy the companies I know. Like, I don't want to be like, ooh, look at this photonics play. It's like maybe in a challenge portfolio, if I think there's a strategy to like make some money in the short term because the photonics names are oversold and there's a good headline. Yeah, maybe that's where it makes, but I want to keep it so basic in my long-term portfolio and have like a few stocks that I just want to buy more of and I don't even care about. And I think, again, the trading account really helped this year because my trading account, I can make trades and not have to worry about like what it means for my long-term portfolio. I think a public challenge account would also help that as well. Apple, by the way, recovering after going down 10% yesterday, back up to 305. As that's continued to make a move. Mitt will sell early access for $100K a month subscription. Dude, can you guys believe that's actually happening? Like, that's legit. That's not a fake story. So whenever we get this Trump tweet that we have an Iran deal, just know that the hedgies are going to buy up so much and we're going to see this market go crazy. But the easy money is going to be made in the first 10 seconds. $100K a month is $1.2 million a year. It's not a lot for a hedge fund. Like 1.2 million, if you're managing 10 billion in assets, is nothing to get access to real-time data. And that might actually be something that we see. Iran says Oman deal on Hormuz is closed. State media Press TV, a senior Iranian official told Press TV that Iran and Oman are close to a bilateral agreement on the Strait of Hormuz. Okay. It's happening, folks. Palantir 160. We got 100,000 shares. The volume's there. The volume is absolutely there to make this happen. We just got to see if she can officially break through. Got to see. SpaceX, let's get a little update on that as well, as we've got those earnings after the bell.
Shares that will come off unlock 2 days after the kind of earnings results. So there's a fair degree short at the moment that could offset some of that lockup. We're obviously hoping and expecting a lot of those people will still hold on to the shares. As you say, we've got a 165 target at the moment. So we're advising clients to be picking up on current weakness.
What is the real opportunity, in your opinion, for Starlink, assuming, and I know it's a big assumption, that Starship is a success and it is able to start sending up and creating constellations of satellites that are far in excess of what we have now? What is Starlink going to be able to do, in your opinion, James?
Yeah, sure. So I think there are kind of three aspects to that. Firstly, we think it has the capacity to be extremely disruptive in the broadband business. So we think the amount of capacity that they are putting up on the network will grow by over 20 times from where they are today. So firstly, I think there's a lot of...
All right, we'll get back to that, but obviously that's going to be a big part of the thesis for Starlink's earnings today, explaining how that broadband opportunity continues to grow. We are very close to 160. I think the volume is coming in, guys. You're going to need a lot of shares to be bought at 160, but the volume is definitely there. Akamai, that goes up 3%. Again, if they're advising clients to buy on weakness, that's where I also think SpaceX will get a pump, because you just have a lot of institutional guys that might end up buying into that weakness and not letting it go that much lower. It's just the unlock. If that becomes liquidity for the unlock, then I think the stock is probably stuck, even if it doesn't, collapse all the way down below 100. 210 on NVIDIA. How much is NVIDIA up year to date? Lumentum 830. NVIDIA year to date is up 11%. So it's beating the S&P, but it really hasn't made the big move. S&P year to date is up. I don't know. S&P is up 12. NVIDIA is underperforming the S&P right now. It's up 12. Okay, here we go. 20 cents. Let's see. 5 cents. Someone's going to have to buy a lot of shares at 160 to make this happen. But it is possible. We hit 159.95. They might play with us here. They might not let us see it. I'll ring the bell if we see 160. It's been 3 months. We got to see. We got to see if we can get there. Palo Alto, that's up 3. Rubrik. Someone bought 180 strikes on SK Hynix, $6 million, expiring November 20th. Oh, wow. Bloomberg. Anthropic is exploring a $36 billion debt package on top of the previous $35 billion package to finance its use of Google chips. Okay, Anthropic bonds, baby. Looks like we need another 40 billion to build some models. Bullish AI infrastructure. I don't know if it's super bullish Anthropic, but bullish infrastructure. We have not hit 160 yet. We have not hit 160. The Iran statement came from state media Press TV. The talks have entered a decisive phase. Iran proposed a central corridor that would replace the northern and southern routes. Iran describes the plan as a lawful, non-aggressive adjustment. Tehran says a Hormuz agreement with Oman is within reach if outside interference stops. So we got to see if that has a chance of happening here today. All right, still toying with us here, but we might have that chance to get there. SanDisk, great day, up 8%. That's making a massive move. Seagate, this was down yesterday. That's up 1%. Getting a good move. Lilly, that's up 1%. Oracle, that is also up about 1% right here. Triple V, thank you for the $200 super chat. Appreciate you, Triple V. Our boy Triple V has a very, very large Palantir position, so I'm sure he emailed me this like Morgan Stanley note this morning about about why the bear case for Palantir is over. And I was like, this is the best email to wake up to from Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley was bearish on Palantir for a while, bro. I remember when it was like 20, 30 bucks. They were like, dude, this black box consulting piece of shit. They're like, this is nothing here. And they had to change. They had to change their mind. So thank you, Triple V, for the super chat. Obviously, big day for a lot of people. Almost 35 bucks on the day. Just a massive, massive move right here. Reddit's up 2%. SPY is up 1% as well. 765 right there. Are you holding service now? Very small position, but yes, at 105. Very, very small position. Fastly up 4. AMD. What do we think? SpaceX pump or dump? Let's do that poll in the chat, and then we'll do AMD. Pump or dump on SpaceX. What do people think? What do people think? Triple V is long Palantir, but I told you guys a while ago he had a short position on SpaceX and space in general. That's done very well. And quite frankly, you know, there's about $3.8 billion of paper gains right now on SpaceX that are short. SNK, that's the short ETF, down 8% today, but that was like at $10 when it came out. SK Hynix also had a bunch of leverage ETFs, and those have been kind of but the short one has done a lot better. And so the entire space trade has taken a pretty big beating. But, you know, that beating happened a lot with the high beta sell-off right here. Again, for SpaceX, I just think they need a real big deal that gets the market to feel more excited. 70% of you say dump. I'm inclined to say dump, but I also feel like everyone thinks it's going to dump. And I think Elon might have something up his sleeve. But then again, for Tesla, they had nothing up their sleeve. I mean, for Tesla, they had nothing, bro. Like, there is nothing they announced on that call where you were like, oh, you know, maybe there's something that gets the street excited. If anything, Elon delayed Optimus again on the call. So, you know, SpaceX fundamentals should be way better than Tesla. But what is that thing that makes people think, oh, this should be a $2 trillion company again? Because if you're buying it at 119 at 1.5 trillion, you're not buying it for a 1.7 trillion. You know, you're buying it for a move here. And I'm not sure if you're going to see it. JOLTS we already had in the morning, came in a little bit lower than expectations. Market didn't care too much about it. All right, Palantir, third attempt. She's trying. She is indeed trying. Is Triple V super chat money laundering? Oh my gosh. I remember talking about it. Dude, he doesn't even, he has the stream in his car. He doesn't even like watch it. He just gets in the car, gives a super chat, and goes about his day. How many people watch the stream in the car or listen to the stream in the car? Put in the chat if you're in the car right now. Just don't die for typing in the chat. But if you're like at a red light, there's actually, you know, when I go to the meetups, there's more people than not that would say it's usually in the car. It's because he's an Uber driver. Wow, it's a decent amount of you in my forklift, dude. That's the part that warms my heart the most. There's been a few truck drivers, shout out to Rob, that are like, bro, you're in my ear all day while I'm driving the truck, and my dad drives a truck, so that's why, you know, it's personal to me. You need to be entertained when you're in the car, right? It's a lot of miles on the highway, just like. So there needs to be something there. So that's always super cool. In my work truck, in the car. Dude, dude, it's always on the toilet. Those are also the funniest, the funniest ones. I'm like, I get it. Okay, here we go. 2 cents. Give it to us. 2 cents. Don't tell me you're giving us blue balls at 159.98. You're not going to do that. Come on, Mr. Market. 94% growth, baby. There it is. There she is. The first time in 3 months, ladies and gentlemen, 27% up on the day. Palantir reaches 160 once again. Dude, that busted through 160. Got all the way to 160.20, which means, and this is very likely of Palantir, every time it gets through a big price level, it does it for like 5 seconds, then comes right back down, and then the rest of the day, it just like nudges back into that level. And so if we actually close at above 160, dude, that's going to be fun. How'd you fix the bell? Dude, honestly, sometimes the bell just like gets stuck. And yesterday, for whatever reason, it got stuck. And I was like, why is this shit stuck? But yeah, it doesn't take that long to fix it. It's just, in the moment I couldn't fix it. So, but now it's good. Now it's good. So we have it there. Palo Alto, that's up 3.5. Klarna's up 1%. ServiceNow up 1. SpaceX up 3. And Palantir again, it hit 160.4. I would imagine it's going to chill out around this 158 to 160 range. And then if there's really volume, it's going to break out. Wow, SPY. My goodness, guys. What a day. 766. This is kind of crazy. This is genuinely crazy. 766. And we're $4 away from 7,700. Whereas SPX is 76.84. Bro, July was just like a disaster. And the start of August. And I really do think those bond yields caught Bessent's and Trump's attention. They were like, we cannot keep this game up anymore. Like, we need to refinance another $9 trillion of debt by the end of the year. Can't do it at 4.7. The question is just how far do we go before things take a break? Or do they need to take a break? I mean, 2025, we went up until October. There was a soybean comment that messed up the year and a crypto glitch. But until then, you had blue skies. CoreWeave back up 6%. We are not doing Technical Tuesday. We have AMD earnings. Jason's also at an event in New York, so he wouldn't be able to make it anyway. But we have AMD. Damn, this is quite the shift from last week. I think it goes to show that once again, like, there's too much happening in the earnings part of the economy to ignore the momentum in these stocks. Doesn't mean the stocks have to go up or anything, but it definitely means when things get really ugly, they don't need to be as ugly as they are. And many of them still down from their all-time highs, but even companies that were down in the pre-market, like McDonald's and Spotify on earnings, they ended up recovering as you have the entire market start to price in better results. Marvell is still up 10% right there. That's yeah, it kind of feels like another April type of recovery. It's just we didn't go down as much as we did in April last year. But, it kind of feels like another form of recovery. I listen in the gym, car, then work. Apparently a lot of you guys listen in the car. It's always cool to hear where people, consume the content from. It's always a different perspective from so many people. What about these space names? What about the other ones? Lunar, Redwire, yeah, all of them making a move today. Lunar, Redwire, Rocket Lab, ASTS is up. By the way, speaking of space, I am concerned about my my spatial awareness. Did you guys know Hawaii is a 9-hour flight from the United States, or from New York. I was talking to someone from Hawaii the other day, and I was like, how far is Hawaii? Like, I thought it was like a 2-hour flight. I thought it was so close to New York. It's 10 hours away. Like, I had to open up a map and be like, because sometimes I feel like if you live like in the, like in the main part of the United States, you forget like Hawaii is even a part of the United. Did you guys actually know it was that far? Like, I really thought it was like a few hours. Yeah, I didn't know it was off the West Coast. I thought it was near the Atlantic Ocean. Like, I could not believe it. What is wrong with you? Dude, you don't tell me all of you guys knew Hawaii just happened to be off the coast of the Pacific Ocean. Because I was like, how far is the flight? They're like, it's like 10 hours. I was like, 10 hours? Like, the flight to Singapore was 16 hours. You're not telling me the flight from Hawaii to New York is 10. And I was like, holy crap, why is it so far away? Like, where'd you think it was? I thought it was 3 hours from New York. I thought it was an island that was nearby. I've never been there. I don't know much about it. Someone said I just returned from Hawaii to New York. Why did all of you guys vacation in Hawaii to know that? I swear to God, I'm not trolling. I legit had to look it up. And I was like, why is this 10 hours away? I was like, this is almost as long as the Singapore flight. Like, this is ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. Okay, apparently all of you guys have vacations in Hawaii for some reason, dude. They thought Hawaii was in Chicago. I really thought it was. I thought it was like near Miami, bro. That's where I thought it was. I thought it was a 3-hour flight to Miami. I legit thought that's. I couldn't believe it. It's like 10 hours. Anyway, I need to do better with my spatial awareness. I'm really the worst at directions, bro. I'll be walking in New York. I've been in New York for like 20 years. I still get lost, bro. And Apple Maps like sucks in terms of actually telling you where you are. I'm like, how am I getting lost, bro? Like, I've been part of this East Coast for so long, and I still can't find Broadway. Like, it's so annoying. You're thinking about Bermuda? I probably was thinking about Bermuda. That's probably why. That's probably why. You guys are acting like you all know about geography. Like, we learned it in 5th grade. Don't act like you guys know where everything is in the world. Like, most of that shit you forgot about. Like, geography, I don't even, like, dude, why do they even teach geography? Like, yeah, it's kind of important to understand, like, where things are, but, like, it's not. And there's no way people are going to actually remember where all this stuff is across the world. You guys are acting like it's that big of a deal. Well, it took 10 seconds to look it up, and boom, it's not something you have to memorize. Like, so much of the stuff you don't need to actually personally know. But I legit thought it was 3 hours away, bro. I was like, why is it 10 hours? I couldn't believe it. All right, AMD earnings. Let's get an update on that as well.
After Reuters reported the Trump administration is drafting a ban on imports of new Chinese optical transceivers. That's the parts that move data inside AI data centers. Coherent and Lumentum are the U.S. plays on this, so it would benefit them. Switching gears, on semi was up, but now down. It did have a beat last night. Lead time stretching and AI data center revenue now set to more than double this year. But the auto revenue came in a little weak, especially when compared to Texas Instruments. Memory, big names moving. The usuals, SK Hynix up about 4% after 3 sell-side firms started it at a buy. Micron higher on a Counterpoint Research data showing it's gaining DRAM share, which is really the standard memory inside phones, PCs, AI servers. It's now just behind SK Hynix, according to this report. And then lastly, DigiTimes, which is out in Asia, reports that the industry as a whole has already sold out of its 2027 DRAM and high bandwidth memory capacity. So again, just think the more advanced memory for AI compute months ahead of schedule. So very bullish commentary there. But the main event lands after the close today. AMD walking into that same sold out setup and a high bar. AMD can essentially sell every chip it makes right now. The problem is just building enough of them. Morgan Stanley says the company is essentially sold out with the squeeze across wafers, memory, and packaging. So the numbers tonight might matter just a little bit less than the actual guide. How fast AMD ramps its new MI450 GPU, so just think of it the most advanced GPU, how quickly the Helios racks get adopted, so that's the entire system, think of this massive piece of equipment, and whether Venice, its next server CPU chip, keeps taking share away from Intel. Strong, though, might not be enough. You had TSMC, ASML, both smashing records just within last quarter, and then they got sold off anyway. The bar for chips has climbed so high that even great prints are getting punished. And AMD ran, 196% into this spring, gave back over 25% into the July drop, and then it's still definitely a consensus long, but it's priced near the top. Wall Street is crowded into this one, so even a good quarter may not be enough, guys. And you can see it, AMD 142% year to date versus the SMH 58% year to date.
Yeah, so I guess it's not just fundamentals that are at work here, right? There's positioning, there's momentum, there's hedge funds that are liquidating. There's all sorts of stuff in the mix.
Precisely. There's specifically Mizuho called it a lot of tourist traders that sometimes don't understand necessarily what a lot of these chip companies do, specifically with the optical side. So you had a lot of swings. You'd see like a 10% swing up and down with no fundamental news, no headlines or anything like that. So what we're seeing is with the momentum trade, a lot of these names did fall lower. So to your point, Sarah, yes, I think we have to factor in that chips get lumped up together, but they're not all the same. And often you have people that think, okay, AI infrastructure, boots and shovels, et cetera, let's put money into that. And now they're noticing that there's not as much alpha with each earnings print. So they're trying to find the winners.
Yeah, and it has been a dogfight.
You know, I may not know where a lot of places are located, but I know what direction Palantir's going, baby. And that is up. 25% up on the day, just below 160. But we are holding on to that green. Anyway, I had to make that joke. AMD. Look, I think what she said was really important, but notice the number one thing she said was, like, it might be priced in. Like, her main argument was every earnings for the AI names, particularly in the infrastructure space, ASML, TSM, et cetera, they all get sold off. And those are not trading at the multiple that AMD is trading at. AMD is trading at 96 times earnings. So it's one of those things where if you look 3 years out, AMD is really cheap. If you look a year out, it's not as cheap. It stocks up 140% this year. TSM and ASML weren't even up that much year to date. So like I'm optimistic on the numbers, but I just don't know if the numbers are going to be those numbers to get this thing to pump into the 600s. Having said that, it was at 580, a month ago. So I mean, they're actually a couple weeks ago. So a run to the 550s, 560s is possible. It's just, last earnings it was 350 going into 420 versus being at 515 right now. Do you own AMD? Yes. I have small position, 208 average. Not massive enough for this thing to go to 600 and like make a big dent. I would definitely not mind it, but I also recognize it's just up a lot year to date. I thought you were about to say Palantir is going to Dublin. Dude, I should have. That would have been better. Especially if Chad's in the chat, because I used the Dublin joke on him. Oh, I should have, dude, because Dublin's actually a place instead of a direction. Yeah, let me do the AMD poll. Oh my gosh, I should have. That would have been better. I feel like you guys are giving me too much shit about this Hawaii thing, bro. I was vulnerable enough to share a personal moment I had. And you guys are acting like I need to know where every little city and town and island is. Where's New Jersey? Like, I know the basic stuff, but Hawaii is a little weird. I know where Dublin is. It's not in Iceland. Although I could say that. That would have been funny, but I know it's in Ireland. Please tell me the Hawaii thing is a bit. Dude, every time you guys think I'm doing a bit, like, I don't know why you guys think I would want to embarrass myself for a bit. Like, the only time I legit did a bit, either I'll say it immediately after I make the joke, because like, it's a bit, or it was the Metallica thing. Otherwise, this is just me. I don't know what to tell you. Mispronouncing shit is not a bit. Like, I genuinely struggle sometimes to pronounce stuff. More than sometimes, but I couldn't believe Hawaii was 10 hours away. I really thought it was near Miami. Like, what is it? Like, is my job to know about where Hawaii is? No, like, I don't spend time thinking about that. It might be the Rutgers education, but the point is, now I know where it is. That's what matters. All right, what else? What else? It was a really good day so far. I don't think we have anything crazy for the rest of the day outside of the earnings, unless Trump actually gives us this news that we need, or Rubio or Bessent, then I think that could also help. Wow, Micron, 11 million into $900 strikes expiring this week. Someone's bulled up on Micron. 11.8 million, almost 12 million into those calls. So we've seen Nebius crazy calls, we've seen Micron crazy calls, we've seen Microsoft crazy calls. So you got a lot of decent option flow. Jensen tweeted again. Jensen did just tweet 7 minutes ago. Okay. Today we're launching Alpha Mayo 2 Super, our frontier open reasoning model for autonomous vehicles. Beyond seeing Alpha Mayo understands and reasons through the complex world, it thinks before it acts. It's a powerful backbone for robotaxis, trucks, shuttles, delivery vans, tractors, and the long tail of mobile robots, billions of autonomous machines someday. We're releasing it for the commercial use under OpenMDW 1.1 so teams can inspect it, fine-tune it, and deploy it. Open models, advanced safety and security. The next wave of AI is robotics, and it starts with autonomous vehicles. Great work, Alpha Mayo team. Okay, I've never heard of Alpha Mayo. Some of you guys that are deeper into NVIDIA, I'm assuming you've heard of this before. This has been around for a while, I would imagine, when it comes to physical AI. I know about Cosmos. I've never heard of Alpha Mayo. I've legit never heard of this. Alpha Mayo is apparently a famous mountain in Peru. Was I supposed to know that? Was I also supposed to know it was in Peru? Was I supposed to know that? But the name also refers to an open source AI platform by NVIDIA for autonomous vehicles. Interesting. Okay, so once again, open source, they are doubling down. Jensen, my thesis is he's not happy that all the hyperscalers and the models started to compete with him by building competing chips. And he's like, screw it. If you guys are going to compete with me on chips, I will compete with you on models. I mean, this is a direct shot at Tesla as well, right? Saying there's an open source version of FSD that could be theoretically given to everybody. Specifically, they're showing that it's better than closed source models. Wow. Now, granted, I haven't tried any other car besides the Tesla with FSD with an open source like self-driving model, but and I'm curious to try them. I just think FSD is literally the best. Now, I'm saying that because I've never tried anything else, but FSD is getting to the point where it's like perfect. And so I'd be very curious to see if Alpha Mayo inside of a self-driving vehicle is just as good. Because if it is, honestly, if it is, like, I hate to say it, but what's the moat to FSD? And I know it's something that's been talked about for a while, but if you could have open source models that, like, the moat's supposed to be the data, but if the data gets created in a more synthetic fashion, which is essentially the whole point of the Cosmos platform, I mean, theoretically, if Mercedes and Ford and all those companies can get self-driving, like, do you pay for FSD? Like, it is one of those questions that I think has always been out there. And I think that's why Elon's also been starting to focus on robots more, because that's a harder challenge. But FSD still is the best experience I've had. Lemonade, that's up 1%. AOI is up. And then SPY, wow, 767 as that continues to go higher. There's no way I'm saying Alpha Mayo wrong. There's no freaking way. There's no, it's like, it's obvious how it spells. There's no freaking way I'm saying Alpha Mayo wrong. I swear if I'm saying this thing wrong. Why am I getting ads for CoverGirl makeup? Okay. Oh my gosh, bro. Okay, well, watch the stupid ad. What's the ad? Goodness gracious. It's an Amazon ad. Why not? There's no way I'm saying it wrong, bro. It's Alpha Mayo. It looks like Alpha Mayo. If this goes wrong, I'm going to be so upset.
Alpha Mayo.
That's stupid. Okay? That is stupid. Doesn't look like Mayo. Mayo would need an I, not an A. An A is A, not It's Mayo.
Alpha Mayo.
Why? Why are they like, and before you guys say this is a bit, no. Like, tell me you guys saw that and didn't think Alpha Mayo. How many, like, honestly, but put in the chat if you saw ALPAMAYO and thought Alpha Mayo. It's definitely Alpha Mayo. Because I think everyone is lying if they say it's no, it looked like Alpha. No, I didn't see any comments when I said Alpha Mayo. Like, oh, you're pronouncing it wrong. I didn't see any fucking comments. Not like everyone knew how it was supposed to be said. Oh, wait. Oh, wait a second. You're right. Cinco de Mayo. That's actually, that's... Okay, if I put the connection together with Cinco de Mayo and Alpha Mayo, I probably would have been able, and then Peru, I probably would have been able, like if I really like put those things together, I think I could have figured it out. No promises that I would have figured it out, but I probably could have, but like M-A-Y-O, Mayo, like it's not like, whatever, dude. Whatever. This is fucking stupid. It's a dumb name for this anyway. Why do they even name it this, bro? Couldn't have named it anything cooler. Alpha Mayo. Regardless, autonomous people. Yeah, this is America. We say Mayo. Like, I can't look at that as an American and be like, that's Mayo. Like, in what world? Now, maybe when I found out the Peru connection, I could have, like, adjusted my pronunciation. But I know I don't like Mayo, but, like, I know how to spell it. Like, M-A-Y. Like, it's just, like, how many people genuinely thought it was Mayo? Like, if you're from that part of the world, you celebrate Cinco de Mayo, maybe I get it. But, like, if you're a regular American, you believe in, like, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, your Second Amendment rights, there's no way you saw Alpha Mayo. You saw Alpha Mayo, bro. You were thinking of the barbecue on July 4th. That's what you were thinking about. Alpha Mayo. Anyway, I think that's enough for today. I don't think there's any other news. I mean, like, we've covered pretty much everything. Earnings after the bell, that'll be the last big thing for today. This Jensen thing just came out. Is Tesla down on this? Tesla? Nope, Tesla's doing all right. Yeah, like Mayo Clinic. That's also what about. Rocket Lab's up, SpaceX up, S&P all-time highs. I mean, it's got to be a good day. It's got to be a good day for everybody. Palantir, I know we're not breaking through 160, but I think by the end of the day, there's a shot we continue to. If we sell off overall momentum and the market falls, then Palantir probably ends the day around 155, 153, which I would still be very happy about. But 158 here is not too bad. We covered Grab in the morning. I will talk more about it on X later, but spent some time on it in the morning. AOI up 20%, Zeta after hours, AMD after hours, a bunch of other companies, but we'll mainly be covering AMD. All right, I think that's it. I think that is it. Do we need to do a word of the day, or have we had enough content with words? I feel like we've dealt with enough words today. 767 S&P. Unfreaking believable, dude. $3 away from 770. S&P up, and 12% year to date is no joke. It's only 7 months into the year. The small caps, by the way, IWM is up 20% year to date, 299 on the Russell. The Dow Jones has got to be at like 54,000, right? Dow Jones, 53,996. Dow Jones up 12%. I mean, just all in all, you're getting a massive massive rally across the board, and oil prices coming down continue to prove that's the case. So the things we have to look out for today outside of earnings is this Trump-Iran announcement. Iran saying that they have a deal with Oman and they've already agreed to it. Once they make that official, and Trump probably tweets about it, hopefully it's not a sell the news, but if it's not, then we'll get a little bit more momentum. All right. That is it. Thank you all for being here. I'll be back on the market close. Yeah, word of the day is Alpa Mayo. That's got to be the official word of the day. Alpa Mayo. Now we all know how to say it. Congrats to everybody on Palantir. Congrats in general if you bought the dip over the past couple of weeks. I know it's been a tough month for many people, especially a tough 6 months for people in software and hyperscalers. But at the end of the day, if these companies are executing and the macro clears up, money has to be allocated. And if that capital is going to be allocated, it probably should be allocated in some of the greatest companies in the world. And that's what we all get to invest in. So thank you, everybody. AMD after the bell. I'll be here. I'll be here with a full crew, 3:45. I'll be live, and I'll see you guys then. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. See you guys in a few hours. Bye, everyone.